Is it live, by the way? Yes, of course it is live. I'm prepared for this, so I did not even interrupt you, but let's say that when I ask you to take the floor, it is live, but you're doing pretty well. Okay, so what were the problems? Well, first of all, we talked with a pharmacy doctor and he told us what fake news are very popular in the public domain and what bad is happening due to the fact that the society is wrongly informed and how you can avoid this. We talked also with representatives of local authorities and they showed us physical problems that they have when it comes to processing data, especially in the context of people in quarantine and how you can manage this through technology. We also had experts, excuse me for interrupting, when it comes to managing, preparing for tomorrow's meeting with my viewers. We are talking about the GDRP world in Europe where we really do everything we can so that as least private things as possible is leaking, and Asia has gone a completely different way, and today, thanks to the fact that they are deprived a little bit of their privacy, it was easier to track them down and to inform others about the threat. Well, when it comes to this aspect, we are very strict, and indeed, we had a couple of webinars, and we had indeed a lot of experts that have to do with data processing and GDRP and legal issues, so the legal support was really strongly felt, and I think that it was really good taken care of. Dimitri Rotokin is with us, the founder of HackRises.com, and he can share also his perspective. Good afternoon. Pleased to meet you. Thanks for the invite. The pleasure is all ours. Well, we are talking here about very important topics. We're happy that you are here. We mentioned that doctors who joined your hackathon said very often that fake news is something that is not good for them. What other conclusions do you have from your hackathon? Well, the conclusion is one, there is a huge power in the integration and integrity of people, especially when it comes to IT people, but also what's also very important is help that we received from medical experts or from think tanks, from students. So I have to tell you that we do know that we can unite in difficult times when we want to manage those difficult times, but at the same time, I think that people really want to be helpful for one another, and at the end of the day, they want to feel that they really help. They help one another, they help the world, they help their local community, and this, I think, the main mission of such events. So tell us what's gonna happen next with Hack Crisis. What are you planning? Well, I have to say that there is a huge number of willing people who want to do something, over 1,800 people. We have many ideas. A part of those ideas will be developed. The majority, if not all of them, are or will be reviewed by various types of organizations, and in addition to this, we have accelerators, we have startups who want to suggest other startups, support who want to work with them, who want to work on their development, and we want to maintain this society as it is. We want to help them unite and to execute and follow their ideas. So I'm happy that in Poland we have started this movement, and we hope that there are going to be more such initiatives. It doesn't have to be called the same way, it's enough for it to be done. So Hack Crisis, there can be a lot of Hack Crises for many activities, for NGOs, for other activities, for other domains, because many businesses will feel this crisis. So thank you for the meeting, keep my fingers crossed. I'm happy that you joined this different type of meeting. All the best. Stay in touch. First table, then the second table. It's gonna be a challenge. Power for Change. Marek Kamiński, welcome. Can you hear us? And there's also Eva and Julia. Hi, hello, and welcome. How are you? Are you healthy? Are you in good shape? Yes, indeed. Great. It's nice to hear and to listen to you regardless. The changes in the world, if there is a will to meet, it's also possible. Marek, I'll start with you. Pleased to see you. Power for Change, regardless the name, it's gonna have to change, do you think, or not? I think that the concept itself is up to date. And it's about humanity facing challenges, the empowerment and other issues. And this is, of course, up to date. The only thing that will change is the metrics of this concept, because in times before the coronavirus, our metrics was different. We wanted our change to happen and to bring something tangible. The metrics was the number of tons of CO2 emissions that we will finally decrease or limit due to our activities, or will focus on similarity and social empowerment, and this was also very important. We wanted to choose one metrics. Now this metric is a little bit different. We think that it's going to be the number of tons of hope that we will give people. How to measure this hope is a different aspect, but I think that actually recently when I was in Tokyo through a webinar, there were a lot of people, and thanks to this lecture in Tokyo, I saw that there are a lot of similarities between the situation that we have here, where you are kind of limited, where you are limited in my job because you have a tent, but the world outside is beautiful and dangerous at the same time, just as it is now during the coronavirus epidemics. And an interesting question that I was asked was how to live in a world where we have lost control over, but we have never had this control over this world. It was only an illusion. So many things that we can control, for example, our thoughts, is what you have in your head. So when it comes to my extreme trips also with Jasiek Mela, you can use this to overcome first and foremost the psychological or mental results of this pandemics. And I do think that when this comes to an end, this will leave a trauma among people. The more so that if you look now at the consequences that are visible, we are talking about a gigantic number of motions for unemployed people in the US, just like this, overnight, regardless of the fact that the pandemics is visible. In Poland, we have gone through a rapid medical education, and now the situation is changing. And the question is whether we'll have to come back to something after this ends. I think that first and foremost, it's difficult to build future based on a week or 2 weeks of this pandemic, because you don't know what's gonna come next. Hence, I do think that we have to wait for the moment where we will experience the fear, but we have to manage fear, and managing fear is an ability that you'll have to generate very quickly, and you have to come to terms with this, especially now and after the pandemics. Now, let's look at how quickly we adopted to these situations. It was 7 days, 1 week to get adjusted to something would seem to be impossible, like home office, work from home, staying at home. Now it is reality. So I also learned this during my trips, namely the ability to adapt to different conditions. It was absolutely unique to see the human flexibility. And I think that humanity will definitely show this ability, but maybe now it undergoes a very rapid and accelerated birth. But I think, Julia, if you are still with us, because Marek mentioned why the Power for Change was actually there to show people that you can travel all around the world and at the same time limit the CO2 pollution. But now we hear voices that if now the world is in deep crisis, factories are turned off and the air over Europe is becoming cleaner. So when we'll come back to the real world, we should stop worrying about CO2 because something else might be a real threat for us. What do you think? Well, I do not think that we should stop worrying, but people will start thinking that way, and the needs, the social needs, will change. Hence, I do think that people will stop thinking about this indeed. And the initial phase, people will worry about other topics, like, for example, our relations with our relatives, with the neighbors, with other cultures also. And for us, this seems to be a point of reference to talk about the relations, about the solidarity, because fear is one thing, what every single one of us experiences, but I think that the social empowerment is being understood broader as a cooperation between people for joint good, and our planet was the objectives, and we talked a lot about the environment, but nowadays our joint denominator are we as the society, and this is how we will perceive this change as well as the entire idea.
So we have to treat it from the point of view of this social solidarity. Well, generally, I can yes, Marek. Well, generally, this is self-empowerment. This is people who themselves should feel their own strength, and I think that the whole of our education, the whole of our openness to the outside world and the goals that we have to reach in it. Now, the important thing is that we have to cope with ourselves, because that is the most important thing, controlling our own fear, finding those new goals in life, this new way in life, finding the strength towards this road. That is what self-empowerment is, and that will be the third pillar, social and self-empowerment. Today we have the moment where until now we've been looking for ways to meet one another, the journeys. Well, its point is meeting others. Today we mention a certain social distance. Well, McDonald's disjoins their arches to give a signal others do it their own way, but the time will come when we will be trying to get close to one another again. Today what we're doing, you're locked in your rooms, I'm locked in a bit bigger studio, but still a room nevertheless. And today many people are suddenly in the silence with themselves, and they start rediscovering themselves anew, rediscovering their families, rediscovering their relations, and not always they want to hear and see what they have. Well, it seems to me that, well, this time is this time to get to meet ourselves and everyone around. That is the time that we sort of not run on forward, chasing the dreams, but still showing who we are, who my people are, what my surrounding is, not the one at work, not something far from me, but the closest one. That is what you said, it is rediscovering oneself anew, rediscovering yourself in your relations with your relatives. That is the time. And I think this is the time where we have to think who we are, where we came from, and where we're headed. These are the eternal questions that are always up to date. Julia, it's nothing easy, is it? Now, there's a great test of our proximity, the global test of our proximity. But I'm thinking, Marek mentioned this pole, this tent, this closeness. Well, you are in this tent and it protects you, but you would definitely want to see what is outside as it's beautiful. But still there is this struggle between the heart and the mind, right? Well, frankly, I very much like what Shakespeare wrote almost 500 years ago. Even if I'm close in a nutshell, still I'm going to rule the infinite space. And in a way, the whole world is within ourselves. That is the world that we can discover. For me, the very important thing is intuition. The goals that I define in the outside world, which come from intuition. And I think within us there is also the world to be discovered. So this is something we're not noticing. It seems that the world is only outside. Obviously there is one, but still, thanks to me being in the tent, thanks to me seeing how much we have within ourselves, that perhaps it is within us that this, well, telephone line to the universe is this cable that connects us with the universe, and that is the time to discover it. So I wouldn't go about treating that as a well being locked off. No, we are simply, well, disjoined from the outside world, but nevertheless, this sentence that Socrates or Plato said, know thyself, I think it is the most important task in our lives that we do not have the time for. So it is a time to get down to it, knowing thyself. Coronavirus gives a lot of this time, perhaps even too much. But Yula, I'm thinking of the name, well, power for change. Today both the power and the change will be something in the world, but the vectors are changing, aren't they? Well, they have changed. And I think in the context of our expedition, the fact that we are a bit further from the world is, and will be coming to it, hungry, perhaps this is the time that we start thinking responsibly on the planet. Perhaps this part of sustainability or the CO2 of this planet thing will, on the one hand, it's shifting, on the other, perhaps it will give us some more responsibility in starting to think of our environment. And this is where I can see the chance. Marek is now focusing on the man, on the inside of the man. I do believe that it is also in a social way going to bring some positive results, that it is an opportunity. Now it seems a massive threat, but still we agree on the one thing: it is an opportunity for the man, for the society, for the humanity, for the planet. So we do believe, we do see the chance, yes we do. I remember that when I was reaching the South Pole years ago, I saw Amundsen Scott Station, which was the peak of technology back then. And I had behind me this whole power of the Antarctic, this whole power of nature, and I thought that our technology is but dust. That nature, once it wants to, is gonna shake us off, and that never in our life are we capable of controlling nature. We can only be in harmony with it, and I think the situation with coronavirus, if we take a more global outlook at it, from a larger perspective, comes from this disbalance in the relation between the man and the nature. From our attempts at consumptionism, from the pace we're living in, from our attitude towards the planet and towards the nature, we only want to exploit it. And I think that the important vector of this expedition is our humility, is our respect. Therefore, I will keep on, if I move around the world with an electric car, in order not to pollute it and not to be able to show this respect to nature. And I think that the further existence of humanity is the existence in harmony with nature and not against it. Not what we used to do until now. Well, at least not at the pace. Thank you very much, Julia and Marek. Thank you very much. All the best to you. Table number 2. See you guys, and you're limiting towards 0, ain't it? Well, keep it up. Even though when I see map, it turns out that the smog is not as good in Poland. There are those who say why. Well, now we're in the place where you can see all the tables to which you can join at any point are going to be mine, but next to this main room, where we're sitting on in this Thursday meeting with the coffee, wine or anything, we're in but online for the first time and not the last time. There are also some specialists, for example, Microsoft specialists to whom we're moving out right now. Microsoft for Startups, Rudy Haidar. Hello, Rudy. I'll only try to move this way, right? I'll wait for my guest, and I hope soon she'll join us so that everybody is ready. They're sitting at the table, so right now we should be here. Not here? Why isn't she here? I will try to do it in a moment. If I may just briefly ask you if you're watching this on any streaming or on Facebook, anything to make it available, this our transmission. Perhaps other people also, thanks to that, will be able to find some interesting new ways and ideas. Join us on the platform. You should be able to see this address, Venture Cafe Warsaw.org/virtual. There's a whole process where you can see what actually we have planned for the whole day. There's really heaps of that as of now, and if the camera can only show that. Then on the screen next you can see the workshops going on. So there's really lots going on. A couple of hundred people already with us.
Yes,
if we're ready, I think.
Rudy Haidar, Microsoft for Startups. Hello, Rudy. How are you? How do you feel?
Good.
I rozmawiamy tutaj o trudnych czasach, w których teraz żyjemy. Natomiast powiedz mi, w jaki sposób pobierasz startupy w tych czasach? Pracujemy ze startupami tak, że staramy się wspierać. Głęboko wierzymy, że jeżeli startupy będą budować swoje rozwiązania na platformach Microsoftu, to wtedy razem będziemy mogli pomóc startupom dotrzeć do klientów końcowych. Przyczyną jest to, że najprawdopodobniej dowolny klient startup jest klientem Microsoftu, dlatego też zbudowaliśmy system, aby mieć gwarancję, że cała nasza sprzedaż sił będzie zachęcona, aby pomagać startupom działać i dostarczać swoje rozwiązania klientom końcowym. Jak sądzisz, który rynek, który typ startupów potrzebuje tej pomocy najbardziej w tej chwili? To naprawdę dobre pytanie. Przede wszystkim koncentrujemy się na startupach B2B, to może być też B2C. Przyczyną tego jest to, że głównie naszą propozycją wartości jest to, aby pomóc startupom dosięgnąć do swoich klientów i właśnie dlatego wierzymy, że jeżeli idą one w kierunku klientów przedsiębiorczych, biznesowych, to jest nasza główna propozycja wartości. Również szukamy startupów, które już mają finansowanie, abyśmy mogli pomóc im zwiększyć skalę i rozwijać się, aby miały one zdolności do uzyskania takich możliwości. Czy startupy w tej chwili potrzebują pomocy, narzędzi, pieniędzy? Co jest najważniejsze? Czego potrzebują, czy co dajemy? Czego potrzebują? No cóż, myślę, że różne startupy potrzebują różnych rzeczy. Czasami startupy są zakładane przez założyciela technologicznego, który oferuje technologię, który zna tę technologię naprawdę dobrze, tę architekturę i potrzebują więcej pomocy w sprzedaży marketingu. Czasami są bardzo dobre zespoły, które naprawdę świetnie radzą sobie na poziomie trójkąta produktowego biznesu technologii i potrzebują więcej pomocy w zakresie rozwoju i skalowania w górę. Czasami potrzebują pomocy w zbieraniu funduszy, czasami potrzebna jest pomoc technologiczna albo budowa technologii w skali. Dlatego też myślę, że to jest bardzo zróżnicowane, dlatego właśnie zbudowaliśmy nasz program, aby zająć się wszystkim. Więc zajmuję się platformą technologiczną, zajmuję się pomocą technologiczną, pomocą z architekturą, oczywiście kredytem w chmurze, ze startupami, masa pomocy biznesu, która idzie też w pomoc marketingową. Każdy startup może znaleźć wartość, która będzie właściwa dla nich. Patrzę na ciebie, na mnie w jednym malusieńkim ekranie. Patrzę na ten świat jako taki. Jesteśmy w zupełnie różnych sytuacjach, że wszyscy są online, wszyscy są w stanie powiedzieć wszystko. Każdy może być osobą publiczną. Myślę o startupach, które... No, myślę tutaj też o świecie po koronawirusie. Myślę, że jest to niesamowite. To różne rodzaje tych sytuacji, to oczywiście różne w różnych sytuacjach. Niektóre startupy od samego początku są bardzo skuteczne, technologicznie zorientowane na zdalną pracę. Rozumieją, że świat jest jeden klik od nas. Jestem w stanie powiedzieć wam, że personalnie zarządzam takim zespołem w 33 krajach w Europie i naprawdę bardzo przyzwyczajeni jesteśmy do pracy na takich zdalnych zespołach. Robimy wszystko, warsztaty 1 na 1, filmiki, sesje i konferencje. No i zgadzam się, że siła świata cyfrowego jest niesamowita. Nie sądzę, aby można było wyjąć z tego znaczenie osobiste i ten taki dotyk osobisty to oczywiście sprawia ogromną różnicę, ale myślę, że integracja tego i zarządzanie, znalezienie właściwego bilansu jest rzeczą bardzo ważną. Słyszałem taki żart, że w przeszłości prosiliśmy szefa, aby dał nam szansę pracować z domu, teraz prosimy o szansę, aby dał nam pracować z biura. Dokładnie tak. Myślę, że masz rację. Myślę, że wielu pracodawców uświadomi sobie, że nie znaczy to, że ktoś nie pracuje. Jest to straszne, bo jest inne, rozumiem. Wielu ludzi jest przyzwyczajonych. Ludzie przychodzą do biura, siedzą, nawet finalizują rzeczy w korytarzach. Ale myślę, że to jest duża zmiana, do której teraz dojdzie. Prawdopodobnie naprawdę zmieni to, jak będziemy planować firmy, jak będziemy rozwijać się globalnie. Zgadzam się. Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękujemy bardzo za czas. To ja dziękuję za możliwość.
Rudy Kajdar,
Microsoft.
Thank you very much.
So that was the meeting in an entirely different place, and now back to our table space, table number 4. No Beauty in Plastic, Daniel Petryczkiewicz. But there's also Karolina and Sebastian.
Tak, Jarek Kuźniar się włączył I Daniela
Yes, Jarek Kuźniar turned in. He wants to take Daniel back, but you'll be able to come back to him later and have some chat. Thank you very much, guys.
Cześć Daniel I dziękuję za to, że tak pięknie
Hello and thank you for having advertised our meeting so nice around Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. That you can virtually find us, so please pray tell, what is the No Beauty in Plastic project for those who are right now watching our transmission and thinking what it is? Well, I'm a photographer. I'm saying I'm a photographer activist, I would say, because No Beauty in Plastic is a project which is about sort of stopping us all in this mindless, pointless consumption and using single-serving plastic. I've always done this very important remark. It's not about bringing us back into the Stone Age and putting us back in a cave. It's rather about we don't have time to allow ourselves for the further reflection, less consumption. And we've reached a certain borderline. Right now the plastic is flooding us, and there are those places where you can't run away from it, even in terms of shops, but there are heaps of areas where those plastics, one-off plastics could be avoided, but you have to understand that we are using it like that. And myself in my photos, I've been trying to stop people with controversy, for them to stop as to how much of it we're using, and is it not so that when we're coming back from shopping, actually more of the volume is taken out by packaging than food itself. Well, I just had the opportunity to go to Rudy Kajdar with Microsoft, Marek Kamiński, and we've been talking about this Powerful Change project. Just as yourself, you are very much keen on fighting the plastic him. For CO2, I know these are the two vessels intertwined, but these two actions are changed. Well, the coronavirus stopped us stronger than CO2. Well, the plastic is not important. Are you not afraid that today we have to use some different language or give other accentuation for people to understand what you've been saying so far? Well, that's a very important thing that you just said. And frankly, for some 2 weeks that we've been grounded in our houses, even though they're being grounded, is not an issue for me. But I have to tell you, I've been thinking about it. As to what narrative, what language should we use now? Because, you know, it is said that on Monday after the revolution somebody has to get down to cleaning, and it's going to be quite similar. The question is if now we, being in the panic and hysteria, are trying to justify ourselves that, well, goddammit, now it's time to stock up, pile up, regardless how it's back, what it's back, or perhaps even get hysterical, saying now it's perhaps, I don't know, even instead of one, we're going to be packing it into 2 plastic bags, because this coronavirus, and when we stop thinking about it, and when it's stopped up by lots of medical waste, which is after all single serving, so for example protective equipment, well, I've already seen photos like that when everybody's panicking that there's no masks. Different organizations saying, we're gonna do it, just take care of yourselves now, but it's gonna float somewhere out there as a plastic bottle used to. That's exactly what I'm saying, and I think that the way I put it is we should be using this time when the hysteria and the panic is gonna go down because we're only people. We're well subjected to, but let us use this time in order to think and reflect. When going to the shop now, perhaps it's not as crowded because they only let 2 people in at a time. Let's think whether I have to take it, whether I have to take it in this pack and you perhaps in a different one. Even though I'm trying to be very much hygienic and doing everything, I'm not paranoid either. Because I hear from the people they've been bringing their shopping into the house and they got 24 hours quarantine for the shopping. Well, for hell's sake, I think it's more of the matter that you have to pull them out, wash those fruit and vegetables, wash your hands, for example. I mean, nobody's going to go about licking the packages for cheese, so it's more of that. Does it mean now that I have to pack everything into plastic bags? No, I've got my own bags. I put it on my own bags, and then these bags could be washed and, well, in a way, decontaminated. On the other hand, obviously, if the shop requires that I take these plastic bags, then I do, because it's more important, obviously, that we do go for the hygiene and the good of all of us than the fact that I wash my bags. But still, I take them. Well, you can do something different. I also managed to those latex gloves, and I've been using them for a couple of times going out into the shops. Perhaps it's not really hygienic, but it does allow us to get safer and not produce more plastic. Even though we're getting to the point where people have an entirely different set of weights, and they say, is it worse or that is worse? To hell with what Petrikiewicz's has been saying for many months. I'm having different problems on my head right now. Perhaps I'll come back to it one day. Perhaps I'll take care of it, but I have to save this or other. Well, unfortunately, we are having this issue of reevaluating right now, and that's why I'm thinking that talking about it right now is difficult, and sort of I have to admit I stopped talking about it. Because after all, I've been trying to tell people the different side of the project, the fact that when I've been thinking for a year and a half working on that, then this project is called No Beauty in Plastics, but it's more about consumption, about what actually fuels us in capitalism, this white capitalism. And it seems to me that when looking at what's been happening with the virus right now, then I think, how is going this post-COVID, post-virus world going to look like? Is it so that we're going to have some reevaluation? We're going to say, oh, damn it, it's not the growth that is the most important. Perhaps we should take it easier. Perhaps we should save rather than spend beyond our capabilities. Perhaps create some funds, some stocks, for us to be able to get some better remuneration for the doctors, for the medical nurses, teachers, all those professions without whom we wouldn't be able to function right. Because who's going to take our garbage out once once the garbage people are down? Or who's going to sell our bread in the bakery when somebody says, I'm afraid to stand behind the counter? Who's going to teach our kids when somebody says, I'm not going to be going into any, if they're paying some bad money for that? Well, when thinking about this school, looking at this example of my 7-year-old daughter and reading what people have been saying, even professors who had their kids at home, they say, well, right now, yes, we have this 500 plus. It did cost me some better internet at home, a better camera, a better tablet, or a better computer, so that my child can suddenly sit at home. So those who have those wages more often work on their own computers, and this is one of the elements of this reevaluating. And I'm thinking how this post-world is going to look like. Are we going to stop and reevaluate everything? It might also be just as probable as a scenario that this capitalism and this greed is going to explode even more, because suddenly we're going to be trying to make it up, saying, well, now we're in the crisis, now we have to consume even more, now we have to manufacture even more, run it to the shops, just like after 9/11. Yes, well, on the other hand, we're having this quick economic education. What's happening in Asia is already giving people money for them to, after all, go about and buy, because you know what, when you're buying, the whole process tends to accelerate. Today, looking at how putting one brick off the wall stops thousands of others, you can see how it is chain linked, right? True enough, absolutely. This is why I'm mentioning those people, the work of whom we fail to mention every day, and on whom we are even more dependent than on anyone else today, because, well, after all, without a TV, well, perhaps that's too much, but no, without you can't without the TV, you can't without the television. Well, myself at least have noticed with a greater piece of thought of those old people whom we used to treat as background noise. And I'm thinking, I wonder where I'd go to buy things if not this shop lady who's standing there and who's on the first line of the front. It's her who is in the greatest danger there. There's dozens of people coming into the shop, and very often these people working without their masks. Fortunately, I haven't seen anyone working without the gloves. Still, that's the way it is, and I've been thinking on this revaluation of the world really strongly. Daniel, thank you very much for the meeting, for the conversation. Thank you very much for having left your conversation for a moment. I hope they'll come back to you. I hope so as well. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you, at least virtually. Be back in different time. Thank you. Now, my dear ladies and gentlemen, should you be willing to pop in and see what the no building plastic is, regardless of what's going to look like in a moment, then we recommend you all the possible places with Daniel Petrkiewicz. I promise we're going to pop now to 100 Technologies. Susan is going to be guest table number 5, and here, Susan should already be here. I hope they'll be able to meet her. I had a possibility with an entirely different project.
So, unfortunately, this is...
Przepraszam bardzo, hello.
Well, I do apologize.
Nice to see you again. Sebastian, przepraszam cię bardzo, dobrze?
Well, sorry, Sebastian, I know that you were just in a different place. I kicked you out of there. Now I'd like to take some time from Susan. Come back later, will you?
Can I leave you, Susan, with WARSAW? Okay?
Absolutely. Good talking to you, Sebastian.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. Susan, nice to meet you again, as I said, and I told my viewers that we met in different situation, in different worlds. It was 3 months before, but it was different worlds. Now we are connected through the through a special app, and we are discussing about the world now and the future of the post-corona corona world. Tell me something about and our viewers. They are the most important about your business.
Absolutely. So, I'm the CEO of Handetic Technologies and co-founder. And Handetic Technologies, we have a patented process of chemically recycling waste plastic that cannot be recycled in a mechanical way, or they're end-of-life plastic. And we convert that to liquid hydrocarbons, so like this, it's fully refined. And then those liquid hydrocarbons can be used to add as a component to traditional fuels, like diesel and gasoline and jet fuel. But more excitingly, it can be used to remake virgin plastics once again, and having a closed loop. And
yeah, I understand it, but we've been talking with my previous guest about the world, the next world, and do you think that people will be focusing about plastic in the future, or they will think that they have much more important problems than plastic?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I think that the economy will take some time to recover. And in fact, I recently read an article from a venture capital fund, which was saying that they estimate that it'll be early next year before the economies and markets come back into some kind of norm. If you're expecting 100% growth, then expect 0 to 50% growth, and to have enough funding through August of next year, August 2021. And this is addressing specifically to startups. So that's kind of scary. But at the same time, with regards to plastics themselves, in this, unfortunately, this exactly demonstrates why plastics are used. You look at all of those medical products, sanitary products, right?
Especially now.
The use, especially now. So the use of those single-use medical devices, medical, plastic shields and all sorts of different things. This is exactly why plastic is so popular, so used. It is an inexpensive, strong, flexible material that can be made in many different shapes and forms and disposed of. What the problem has been is not the usage and the economies of using it. It has been, what do we do with the end product? So if we can find solutions to address the waste, and then we can actually remake things over and over again, then that's the best case scenario, right? So I think with government legislation, and the trend and the focus towards sustainability, that there will still be a need for the focus on recycling plastics, addressing climate change. People would argue that some of the problems that exist, things like coronavirus and things like there will be more viruses that come forward, is partly due to things like climate change. As the Earth melts its Arctic ice, all of these ancient viruses are being released. As people are addressing things like smog and pollution, you have health issues. There's many different reasons, and they're all interconnected. And that's the problem. In the past, everybody thought very linearly about all the problems. And in fact, what we're realizing as we go through is that it's not separate issues. Everything is connected.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about the businesses in general. What do you think that times are good for startups, or because we are hearing about the problems on the U.S. market, in European market, in Asia market? Is it a good moment to developing the startups?
I would say that if you are a startup that are focusing on telemedicine, if you are focusing on
streaming, or being live,
streaming, yeah, sure. There's lots of those kind of business that are doing absolutely fantastic, and it's a good time to. In fact, I saw the other day a call from a VC that was, saying we can write a check for you in 24 hours. If you are addressing, issues around coronavirus and, problems like this, right? In 24 hours, they'll write you a check. So certainly for certain industries, this is the time. In other startups, I think that if you haven't started, maybe, you do all the prep work first. But for those of us who are already on the way, I think it's very important for you to look at your budgets right now and make some hard decisions and hard cuts now, because otherwise you're going to die a death of 1,000 cuts, because you're going to hope that something's going to get better, hope something's going to be better, hope that something's going to get better. And you need to prepare for worst case scenario. So therefore, I would create milestones and don't spend money. Try to keep your money for as long as you can so you have a longer runway, because it's going to take some time for the markets to come back. Yeah.
Did you decide to change your own milestones in your business or not?
I have not changed the milestones in our business as far as the business side is concerned. I have made some decisions to prolong purchases and capital expenditures. I'm also probably going to delay hiring people, because the last thing you want to do is hire people and then have to let them go, right? Yeah. So I will. So unfortunately, we're going to delay hiring people. We will not make certain purchases that we are planning to make until we see how things roll out in the next 2 to 3 months. And we're going to have to really, tighten our belt. Even though I have to say, congratulate me, we closed a round on Friday the 13th.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, we
special
just
date.
closed around.
Friday the 13th is special date.
Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations.
But we managed to raise, we raised a round, and so we're okay cash-wise, but that cash was supposed to last us through the end of the year, and we were hoping to make certain milestones, but now I am, trying to make that cash last longer. Yeah. Because I'm not sure when business is going to be where it needs to be.
I understand. My fingers crossed. Thank you very much, Susan. Congratulations again, and be careful. See you again.
Yeah, you too. You
Thanks.
too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Nasz kolejny gość to
Our
Susan
next
z Handheld
guest,
Technologies.
Susan Hanks from Hunt Technologies, and this was the last conversation in English. I do hope that you'll have a possibility to come back to Susan and talk to her, but I will now like to take you to table number 7 and table number 6. Sorry, table number 6 are our friends from Spectra Solutions. We do hope that Marek is with us already and his colleagues. Good afternoon, Marek. From what I see, you have to click your microphone so that you are audible as well, and this will be important for us. And now, great, we can see you and listen to you. Sebastian is with us, Marek and Sebastian, and I have your equipment here. I'm looking at this, and it's neither a plane, helicopter, a bigger drone, the one that I have. What is it good for, your construction? Well, first of all, about the construction itself, because it's a very innovative solution that we have adopted here. This is actually a central wing construction with a vertical launch possibility. This is a general idea, but we can use it for various things. It all depends from what it can do, and the results are really great when it comes to our drone. When it comes to using our drone, the max efficiency possibility when it comes to the electric option that we have can be achieved up to 150 kilometers when it comes to reach, 5 kilograms weight with a huge load capacity, and the use can be various. Actually, in every single domain of industry to monitor various areas and so-called linear infrastructure, so electrical lines, pipelines, borders, highways, railways. It can be used. We can also deliver sandwiches if you wish, and it can be used also by different services. And we will talk about those services in a moment. But when you started to talk about the fact that there is a big cargo area, quite big, today we are all about delivery, and we are all hidden in houses because this is what our reason tells us to do and our services. But the ones that are there to deliver for us are used in various ways, and also what you present is really necessary. I'll come back to my question, and in a short version, today we are talking about the fact that the world is on hold. We are closed in our homes and we count on the couriers to deliver, but your equipment is like a air courier, right? Air delivery. Yes, exactly. We can transport up to 5 kilograms of cargo. When it comes to shopping bags, it will be difficult to deliver them because it will be more than 10. But if it is a light parcel, like documents or, for example, anything that weighs less, like, for example, shoes, loafers, we can do it very, very quickly indeed. And what is more, when it comes to the load itself, it will not be used maybe when it comes to urban areas, but you can even drop the cargo on a parachute, so you can drop it independently. We started thinking whether our drone could maybe not be helpful in medicine, and we were thinking, for example, to drop from a parachute, a CPR device on an accident site, so that you can have the CPR on site and automatically send information to medical services. And we expanded our activity also when it comes to patrolling and others. So is it a tool that is self-controllable, or you need a remote with a concrete tool so that you can control the machine and arrive at the destination given? Well, when it comes to the ways how you can control the device, there are a number of modes. Of course, they are standard when it comes to the professional drones, meaning you can have an operator, it can be an autonomous flight as well, but when it comes to security, you have to look at it on various domains. First of all, we have to take care so that the drone itself does not harm anyone, anything on the ground. Which is why the systems that we are using on the systems, multiplied systems like the engine on the drone or the takeoff system or the vertical start solution is assigned to every software, like every single engine, and the drone itself is also secured with a parachute. It has its own parachute, so if any emergency situation occurs, then it can land with the help of the parachute. But when it comes to the safety, we can of course detect obstacles.
Czy macie już klientów, którzy wykorzystują to wasze rozwiązanie?
Do you have also already customers who use your solution?
Żeby było śmiesznie, no właśnie mamy pierwsze zapytanie.
We have our first client already because we are starting the sale of our product. We already have it's the Near East, but we cannot unfortunately disclose any details. So I keep my fingers crossed, and I hope that your product will be sold and you'll develop your product and sell it not only in the Near East but all around the world, so that it can be used in various situations you told about. Thank you, Spectre Solutions, and our virtual guests. And now let's move on to the big room, and we have table number 8. Okay, let's move on to table number 6. Let's go back to table number 6, and this is what I thought. Table number 7, we should have representatives of the medical company, right? So I hope that they will make their voice heard, but this should be table number 8. So let's move on to table number 8.
Nie wpadliśmy, a to jest świetny pomysł.
Ether
Biomedical, 7 or 8? 7. Okay, let's move on to table number 8. We will wait here for our guests so that we can talk to them. And of course the question will be all about how this company deals with the situation that looks completely different, where various types of businesses start making other decisions that they used to do. Susan told us that they managed on Friday the 13th to close another financial round, and the money now can be dispersed in a different way. Maybe it will not be done as it used to be, so that she'll not hire people because she'll have to wait for it, but other decisions will be delayed. But there are also such businesses that allow for further development, that catch the moment. Despite the fact that it's difficult for the businesses, then these are domains that really have a good moment, and you can call it that way now, to find a solution and connect. Ether Biomedical.
Marta?
Super jest to obserwować na żywo. Zachęcam Was do tego, żebyście weszli na ten link o Virtual i zalogowali się do tej platformy. Natomiast za chwilę będziemy zaczynali niesamowicie interesującą debatę.
At the moment we will start a very interesting debate on how this new world will look like, with great guests, and maybe we could use this moment to invite everyone to the debate that will be available on the channel. You talk about the New World debate, right? Yes, you don't have to switch channels. We will start the debate in 5-7 minutes, I suppose. And apart from that, we have 2 additional workshops. One workshop, Strength Community, which will happen in 2 minutes, and Tech Action for Climate by Global Shapers. So feel invited to join. At the bottom you can click. If you were to search for a way how to enter the workshops, these additional sessions, they are at the bottom right here if you're already logged on our platform, and if you're not yet logged in and you have joined a couple of minutes ago, then after the registration you will find the link below. Do I have a chance to join Arc Factor or the medical company, or are you waiting for a debate that should start in a moment? Iwo will launch it, Bogna Świątkowska, Filip Dębowski and Professor Piotr Korzajski will be there. Also have the possibility to join and to ask a couple of questions. I'll ask your questions as well, so if you want to ask any questions, you'll have the possibility to do so. And we are all around the world with our transmission because Periscope, LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube is active, so use it. And just as Aureliusz mentioned, share this event so that everyone who wants to join, who have questions, who want to join this discussion, so that you have this possibility. As you heard while moving around our platform, which is a huge test for us also because we'll build in Warsaw here together with one of the Chinese startups, what we did is first and foremost for you to have a possibility to join various tables and talk about the topics, switch them, and have the possibility to meet people who on a daily basis are focused on something completely different or do something else or have no time for such a conversation. Nowadays we are online, so we have it here in one place, and you can join in various workshops and ask your questions. It will be possible today. We are connecting now with the guests of our debate. I wanted to mention the place that we are opening as a foundation with cooperation with many partners. A strategic partner is Cambridge Aviation Center that launches in June this year a huge innovation center, innovation campus actually, that will be located in the center of Warsaw, and one of the main places will be an open space focusing all around innovation. We're talking about engineers, innovation, yes, and today we mentioned also today in the conversation with our guests that actually the social responsibility for many things will have a different meaning that it used to be now, and there will be a lot of topics that have to be solved in the moment of an economic crisis after the virus, and numerous topics will have to be solved, yes, and we have not planned this, but it seems to us that this place that will open in June will play an important role in rebuilding social trust that is a necessary factor for innovative projects to flourish. So here you can see at the back a visualization. It will have 2,000 square meters in the center of Warsaw, and this will be an area, multifunctional area when it comes to events. So you'll organize events up to 350 people. You'll have area to make meetups, kind of meeting where many people can meet, exchange contacts or start a new contact, up to 1,000 people. And in this place we'll also organize, starting with June, the first day gathering, and I hope that without any obstacles concerning the number of people that can attend one meeting, because we hope that approximately 500-800 people will join such meetings. We see it all around other cities. And another place that we are going to open is a place that, or is a project that we're opening as a foundation. They are giving a lot and create the added value. The key value of this place is that here we'll create the first in Warsaw, the first place, co-working place, where you have the possibility to sit down, use the laptop, work, meet other people, but it will be a free of charge place for 200 people. Very unique place in the center of Warsaw, so it's going to be close to the main railway center station, so when you're waiting for your train to Kraków or Gdańsk, you'll be able to be there. Then we have a trend house, a club dedicated for leaders of various types of places. We believe that innovation is created on the verge of various areas, and a place that we really need as a society is to have a multidisciplinary place where scientists can meet with investors, with entrepreneurs, but it's not necessarily to be paid. So we came up with category of people that we'll search for, namely people who have a very positive influence on how our world looks like, and we want to invite the people to one place and want to see what's gonna happen when they will meet, when we will have additionally to catalyze different events circling all around the topic of future. I think that this entire situation around the coronavirus launched in our heads the following question: what's going to happen in future? So the question is important indeed, how the future is going to look like. It's not easy to answer this, but it's important to think about it. So these places are to give a completely new value, and we worked on this for 5 years. And this place is like a dream come true for us. A dream come true when it comes to this place, because we thought about it for a long time. So I keep our fingers crossed that on the real estate market the coronavirus does not destroy as much, so we'll wait for June. I see our guests that are asking for many things. A question to our heroes from a couple of minutes ago from Spectre: this flying with cargo, is it applicable with the binding law? It is binding indeed, and it does apply to the law indeed when it comes to aviation law over cities. But what they said, and what is always important in the case of such tools, is safety and security, and the cargo that will be transported will have a special parachute, which is why they'll fall down in a safe way and they will not hurt anyone, and the same applies to the drone. It has a lot of security features and it will land always safely. No one nowadays would launch this without a safe landing possibility. I see that you had many links in order to reach us, and you're asking whether the roundtable debate will be available here on a new place. No, it's going to be available exactly here. You'll be able to join Iwo Zmyślony and his guests, Aleksandra Przegaliska, Bogdan Świątkowski, Filip Dębowski and Professor Piotr Puszański. It would be difficult to meet them in one place, however I understand that it's not impossible in the world that we are now nowadays, in the online world, in a totally online world. This is indeed very, very simple, the more so that we are undergoing an accelerated process of how to work with the camera, so to focus the attention of our viewers, and I think that after the quarantine we will be experts in this. But even what the representatives of Microsoft said when we talked about the support for startups, there's also a discussion on what big teams you can manage and how easy nowadays it is to do this, and how those teams have converted to a completely different way of managing. We talked also, and I see that this is a topic that is really debated on, because you have doubts whether all of those who up to now, like Marek Kamiński talking about CO2, of others talking about plastic, thought about this to look a little bit differently, so that the world looks a little bit differently, to think and not to leave this carbon footprint, or to think and not to leave this plastic everywhere. It turns out that they will have a difficult task, and even they know themselves that they'll have to maybe not switch their narration because the topics will remain the same, but they'll have to think about your involvement, the citizens of the world, in social actions differently, that up to now seem to be very important. There are also those who think that these are not the most important problems, so let's leave coal and other problems, let's stick to what's important now, and it is important indeed. But even when we talked with the representatives of startups that utilize plastic or use them for different sources of energy, well, I have to say that we talked about daily plastic, like plastic bottles or other stuff, but today we have a situation where, looking all around the world, we have a lot of plastic waste, but medical waste as well, and sooner or later we'll have to recycle them, use them, and very often the plastic will have to be reused in a new way. Asia already has this problem. I recently saw a document, a beach document, where you said look, those bad tourists polluted this beach with plastic, but nowadays we see on the same beaches a lot of remains after the action help people with coronavirus, and it's also a footprint that we are leaving in the world. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us, and there will be a lot of opportunities to ask questions, the more so during this round table and the topic that there will be there, namely the new world. Up to now, when we are talking, and we are here for 90 minutes, we're talking with representatives of various startups and businesses. No one knows how, no one knows how much. There are those who know that they have to reconvert their business. There are also those who know that have to prepare differently to work with their customers, and there are those who know that they'll have to reinforce their communication and change the communication with their business partners, but no one knows when the new thing will start, how the customer of the future will look like. And Marek Kamiński also spoke about this, that this is a moment when actually we have left the TGV train, we are at the railway station, nothing's happening, and many of us can't deal with it. Finally, suddenly we get to know things about ourselves that we have not known up to now. We are thinking how much of the free time we'll have, but I remember a conversation that I had recently in my morning show on Onent, when athletes said that they understand that they had to cancel the Olympic Games, but today they're not training. When I talk to a 2-meter tall guy from volleyball, then he won't be able to play volleyball at home, but suddenly he says, suddenly I have time to focus on psychology all around volleyball. I have time to read books that will help me, that will give me power in the future. Suddenly I have time to focus on completely different things and prepare for training in a different way. A moment of this speedy world recently when athletes said that they were even happy in some disciplines that they have psychological support. Now it turns out that they have to undergo a accelerated course of having free time. Some say in a moment we'll start to think whether Excel or files are most important, whether we should focus on this or there are other things which are more important. But as I said, maybe those topics are visible, but it's difficult to find an answer because it is too early. Daniel joined us. Daniel, my guest from a couple of minutes ago, you don't have to switch channels, stay where you are. I know that on Facebook you have the best access to the content, so we are trying to do everything so that all guests, members of the New World debate are ready and will join us in a moment. It's 7:10. We are waiting for the debate, I know, but excuse us, please. I know that you are understanding and distance to all of this what's happening. We are also testing these new devices so that we can be here together than we used to be in the past. Are we ready with the New World debate or not? Yes? No, we are still waiting among the guests of this debate, people that you will be able to ask questions. I also joined the debate. I'll change this to do in a completely different one. Aleksandra Przegalińska, Bogna Świątkowska, Professor Piotr Płoszajski will talk about how the new world looks like now, how it's going to look like in future. If you have questions, feel free to use them. You'll have all the possible tools to ask those questions. You can send them to us so that we can read them to the guests. Later on, after the debate, I will try to talk to Aleksandra Przegalińska. It'll be a face-to-face debate, one-on-one. It's going to be an interview about her new book that was supposed to be shown in a different way than now, but the world is closed. You have no possibility to meet authors. The bookstores are closed, so what you can do, you can order a book online, and you're encouraged to do so. Artificial intelligence, is it really that human-like? But today you'll have the possibility to listen to such a meeting with the author of a book and an online version. And I hope that you'll be able to ask Alexandra a couple of questions. Recently, she's visible in various places and talks about the world that was not known to you because either people didn't want to listen to her or there was no possibility. But today, in many cases, artificial intelligence is really necessary so that the new world in which we are living in and we have to live in, somehow put into order. We talked also with representatives of Microsoft, who today, or have always done this, but this help now they look completely different. This help for startups. There was a question whether money is important, whether ideas are important, whether IT solutions are important, and what is necessary for startups, and nothing has changed. But I think that those organizations will be valued that somehow can manage in these difficult times this new difficult world, and how this new world is going to look like, how we can talk about this. We will check with our guests, with our professors that we have invited to our conversation. In a moment will come to us, and I'll be the one that will ask your questions. Thank you, by the way, for the questions that have already been asked, and you can do what we can do. So this entire space that is here, this is a place where we have set up 15 tables.
So each and every one of them is joined by subsequent persons, some coming, some leaving. There's a very specific person, the hero of the given table, or the host. You can approach them, you can tune in, see what it looks like. Sometimes there's 2, 4, 6, 8 persons, sometimes even more, sometimes fewer. Smaller groups, larger groups, you can always come in, tune in, and have a talk. You can also peek on those table talks, table 1. There you go. We'll try and move over there in a moment and try and have a peek with them as well, if it's possible. I think we're slowly getting ready-ish.
Tylko to łatwiej przez telefon będzie mi teraz, czy przez telemedyczynę, niż lecieć do lekarza.
No zdecydowanie tak. No, ja
Easier through the telephone, definitely. When I told you, when I was at the yeah, they're talking there, sitting there talking what is nice. I don't want to interrupt, so I'll switch off for a moment. But as a matter of fact, you can see what they're talking about. You can ask them a question anytime. You can take some knowledge out of that, so for it to function as it should. And you can pick any table, also table number 8. It's very quite nicely. There's a whole discussion over there for people sitting, talking, Kamil, Marcin, Monika, and Zuza. I'm only there to show you. I don't want to interrupt, but just take a look at what it looks like and how simple it is. You can put a glass of wine, just as Monika did. You can pick any space you like. So the topics are different. Everything is written over there. You know what topics are there in each room, and you can definitely join in and have a talk. Now I'll move over to the subsequent table number 14. There's also a debate going on. Anytime you can become one of its participants. If you have any question, if you have any doubt, you're all welcome to join. What is important, what you also saw here below, I see it down here on my computer as well, is the special workshops that we have also prepared, apart from discussion outside talks. These are also the special workshops, sometimes some fire chats. You can also take an active part in. What is important for us is that outside of the possibility created for me that I can talk to my guests, you also should have the actual influence on the talk. Since the whole world is going online, I don't wish to interrupt her, so I'll pop off the table so as not to interrupt Susan while you had the possibility to chat her. There's also one of those startups which as of now is dealing with the plastics redevelopment, so they can be recreated and so that the world would be a bit cleaner than it used to be. But coming back to all the questions we can see here, probably not all of them will be asked, but I promise I'll do everything I can so that the majority of them goes live into the world. And Piotr is asking, when is the networking going to start? Piotr, networking basically has been going at any time. You can come in, you can tune in, you can talk, you can make use of it. You can ask a question, but it's important. The background is not important, but it's important. The voice is not important. The important thing is the topic, which is now being discussed, and around that everything is happening. So, shall we? We ready? One of the most important debates of the evening. I'll also be joining it presently, but as your representative of the viewers.
O, już nie, chyba.
Iwo, kamera jest twoja.
So the camera is yours and the viewers are yours. Okay, hello, we apologize for these interruptions. We're all testing those new formats of communication. Soon we're gonna forget all this mess and we're gonna be talking about the VUCA world, and we've been meeting here again every month talking, and we've talked on the trends of the future. We talked about the world which we've been trying to predict. As far as a month ago, we've been thinking on what the world of food is going to think. 2 months ago, about the possibility of pandemics, and then according to the experts, these questions or the fears connected with them seemed ungrounded. And lo and behold, here we are, some 2 months later, in the world that nobody was prepared for, in the world of VUCA. That's what our today's conversation is going to be about. The participants are going to be the prominent specialists, experts. Even though we're going to be talking to what extent today we can go about using this word, what we could expect from the experts. The invitation was accepted by Professor Piotr Puszański, a prominent specialist in the theory of management, especially in the context of new technologies, business transformation. Aleksandra Przegalińska, that is a philosopher, specialist on AI and technology changing man. Bogna Świątkowska, who is an experienced activist, social activist and a matter of culture. Boski, who for some years have been connected with the Polish international startup community, Project Innovation Center, developing, amongst others, the project of Trend House. That is the institution formatted and oriented towards the visionaries, innovators of different areas of culture. I thank you all for being here. And perhaps now we'll move over to the question that would allow our viewers, our public, to understand what VUCA world is about and how is it connected with the black swans. What is it?
Filip?
W kontekście przedsiębiorczości i biznesu i przypadek koronawirusa, ten
The case of coronavirus shows that we are found in the VUCA world. Well, today the VUCA world is no longer a metaphor. As it seems we've been talking about it. We have known what the world of permanent change is, and suddenly it turns out that this knowledge, in a way, tends to cloud our ears towards reality. So the moment we've been thinking what awaits us, we analyze different scenarios, and now, when the world has changed day to day, it seems nobody was prepared. What would you say, Alexandra? Well, I think we have just experienced the VUCA world when we're having those issues with our connection, the difficulties with the platform. Theoretically, we all know that theory gives us some difficulties, and in practice it is resistance, but when you experience it every time, tends to throw us off balance. Then we had this mini nutshell example of what it is, what it might be like when it seems we have all the links and everyone thinks should be working, and then suddenly you get into a bottleneck, you have to reconfigure. Finally we managed, but through different channels than we had thought that it will. So it seems to me that yes, as a matter of fact, we are having this situation that we conceptualize a certain change, but I think we also presume that by conceptualizing it, that is this new paradigm, the paradigm of entanglement in a way, of this white noise, the fact that somewhere out there it might actually hide us from the noise per se, so this reality will not hit us. But I have to say that when I work very practically with technology, trying to coding or writing some algorithms down, every time it seems to me we should know how it works, and then I tend to trip and fall over the simplest elements. And so it happened here that this reality started grinding. So I think from this point of view, observation is very much up to date. You may conceptualize as to what it's going to be like when the changes comes, but when it comes, it turns out that we are totally helpless because theory is not aligned with reality. So when preparing theoretically, we had presumed that the change would be what we thought it would be, and as a matter of fact, it's always different. I'd like to come back to the question what it actually teaches us. Can we draw any conclusions from that? I would also like to know the perspective from Bogna, who I know got prepared. He showed me a trend book on VUCA World. Perhaps you could show it off the camera. I also have it. I think I also have it. Well, yes, of course, there it is. That's the trend book. For VUCA Times for the 2021, and it was prepared by the Zuzanna Skalska team, who's been dealing with trend observation, even though there are very many different spheres of our life, of our activity in the social sphere. As a matter of fact, we won't be able to find any predictions in here on the actual coronavirus as a global issue. My perspective that I should like to introduce here is perhaps a trivial observation for 2 weeks. As a matter of fact, this our world, our piece of world, has been very intense in discussing as to what happened since the moment we discovered we can no longer function the way we used to, that it is a change which very often used to be fantasy of those who would speak of the persistent growth that we have to stop, that the pollution of the natural environment is actually leading to some unimaginable issues. And here we had this sort of saying, but what are we to do? Stop the world? And now the world has actually stopped. So in a way it is those radical issues fulfilled, the most radical ones that we heard, which were expressed by the community as well, were critical towards everything that was happening. On the other hand, what you mentioned, this inventing, this predicting of the problematic issues that might appear, was also, as it was said, as our civilization said, to the good times. Even the problems used to be the ones from the good times. And what is paralyzing right now, it seems, is that the very many processes are happening simultaneously in a scale which hardly allows us to create those connections. So here, what we said is for you to put that all in order for this entrance point. Bogna now mentioned of those phenomena, the scale of which is much more far-reaching and overwhelming than everything we could have expected. There's this black swan metaphor. That is the phenomena we had not expected, which seem highly improbable, which from the point of view of the expert is usually tossed aside as absurd, and when it happens, the consequences are far-reaching and touching everybody. And examples of such black swans, I hope you can see in our live transmission on the screen. Of course, the newest story of the VUCA world is the WTC 911. Then a couple of years later, Nokia downfall, the Wall Street crash in 2008, Brexit, something that nobody had expected. The question is, does experience of this sort teach us anything? Can we actually draw any conclusions? Is there anything wise to be said? Anything that would not stop us only on the level of the narrative? Filip, Alexandra?
Ja myślę, Iwo, że poruszyłeś bardzo ważny wątek.
I think, Ivo, you've tackled a very important issue. The nature of those black swan is they are totally unpredictable, and here it is well worth coming back to this VUCA issue, which is usually complexity and unclearness. And here in this world where these black swans appear, we need some leaders who see above the complex system, those leaders who have the vision and the mission based on some very specific values, and instead of creating plans which later they are holding to and blocking the stress due to the non-completion of the plan, pushing up and supporting the competences of those employees in the different fields, creating those who can appear in this changing world full of black swans. But here, Pasapa, I'll give you a full stop because I can see that Professor has joined us, and I'm sure you should like to introduce him. Professor Poszański, yes, we have already introduced him as an expert on managing change in organization in the context of technology transformation and social transformation. We've been trying to introduce to our public, the viewers of our discussion, the topic of the VUCA world, what it is. Professor, if you could briefly, from your own perspective, name what the VUCA world is and what actually it tells us of the present-day world. What does this concept tell us of what we can see up behind a window? Professor, we can't hear you. You have to turn the mic on.
WUCA.
Dobra.
Chyba już się uda.
Teraz słyszymy jeszcze raz.
Znaczy, ja muszę powiedzieć, że całe to określenie...
Well, I have to say that the whole VUCA world is something I don't like at all. I mean, I like it much more when we used to call it the black swans, as it's simpler. Black swan, as you all remember, well, I was having some issues with the connection now, I'm sure somebody's already mentioned it. The black swan is a very nice concept, which only tells us as much and so much that the history of the world was decided usually by events that nobody had ever foreseen and had no right to happen. For me, the point of the whole world, there's different VUCAs and brutal. I mean, this is the very essence of the world, that there are phenomena, and they are that dramatic, because in terms of their expect, we couldn't have foreseen them, and we were never prepared for them. Now that the world, or the organizations, or the societies, or economies, which are not prepared to the unexpected phenomena, well, that is your VUCA world. I very much like this book, which I'm sure you all read, all of you, by Tim O'Reilly. The book which even has this obscene word in its title, the main thesis of which is that we reached a place in the world, and as I say it now, after a month or 3 months of COVID, it is especially important when we reached a place in the world where we continue to encounter phenomena which make us say, what the fuck? And now, the problem with the world, and it's not that the most important thing is what we used to have, those people and competitors, or supply chains or anything else, but rather the events, the WTF phenomena, which appear and we are totally unprepared for them, as they can make us turn the world upside down. And now I think that obviously it's easy said, harder done. How do you prepare the world for the what the fuck phenomena? Well, if I may interrupt and ask you, how do you prepare ourselves? How do we prepare our house, our budget, our organizations, our community as to the changes which come from directions where nobody was looking in? The VUCA metaphor is good because it tends to pinpoint the fact that the information is there, but the information tends to appear in a so chaotic way, so peripherous, that the experts look at them and they say, this is absurd, it's a waste of time. Nobody should be paying any attention to that. And the question is, if we don't take the metaphor of the VUCA world as it is, or the what the fuck or whatever, then shouldn't we rather shape in ourselves the competences, the skill from the point of view of unit, organization, community perhaps, that allows us to find our place in this reality? And what competences are these, if you agree, Alexandra? Well, I do have this favorite thesis of mine. That is, I'm passionate of the chaos theory, which from those two main statements out there from the strange retractor, there is this other notion, that is, this is the susceptibility to the initial condition from which the thing stems as small changes can shift into larger ones. Now, my answer to your question is, well, I keep repeating that to my students, that the whole thing then is that you follow the weak signals, because we tend to keep talking about the megatrends. When something is a megatrend, then it's too late to be concerned about it. Every megatrend used to be a small, weak signal. Now the whole issue is that we build in ourselves a system of recognition of the weak signals, which obviously is difficult and complex, since weak signals generally are abundant, and the massive majority of them are totally inconsistent. So any revolution starts with two guys going down to a lousy bar to get the 3 beers. Now, very few people go to bars to get a beer now. The competence must be that we can meet those who are going to initiate a revolution, be it a new technology, be it a new consumer need, be it a new phenomenon or whatever else. Nevertheless, I keep underlining the word system. If you're asking about qualifications, for me the most important thing is to create a permanently working system of delivering to ourselves the signals on the weak signals. Okay, that's great that you said it, Professor, but once again, I'd like to come back to Alexandra and to say terms such as thick data. I'm sure you know what I'm talking, thick data, as opposed to big data, that is the ones that we can measure, which have a scale. If you could please interpret this context, whatever the professor said. Well, still, before I do, I should like to come back, perhaps I'll try and join it to the previous question you asked. It was a very good one, that is, the question as to whether it teaches us anything, or what happens with each and every time where a black swan flames by. And I'm under the impression that here we have this weird schizophrenic situation, as recently I've been witnessing with some amazement. A subsequent Facebook chain wherein a mass of people tossed in their photos from the forest we were children by feeding the system with subsequent data for free. Even though the face-up issue had been a year behind, there were controversies as to whether those photos of ours, younger or older, could have gotten to, but people never hesitated. A month later, they repeat the very same cycle, because there's a new chain link, there's a new trend where they want to join, they want to be exposed. So on the one hand, I tend to have this impression that we learn very little, that as black swans are approaching us. Perhaps they are not repetitive from the point of view of repetition on the one hand. Brexit on the other hand, financial crisis are entirely uneven phenomena with different dynamics and causes. Nevertheless, there is this impression that this capacity of ours to answer those swans approaching is really minute, because either we learn very quickly or we never learn, so we resist to those warning signals. On the other hand, however, in order not to blow this negative trumpet overly, I would put it like that. With a certain set of amazement, but also some awe, that I have observed the capacity of actual mimicry. I'm not sure I like the VUCA and all those corps issue those anti-fragilities, but if I were to make use any terms which describes this paradigm of change, I would say that as a matter of fact, out of the massive organization, but it was only the possibility for us to leap into the digital world and try and adapt, well, this false transformation of digital was really happening very quickly. So even in our university, where within 3 days we managed to shift thoroughly towards the remote lectures, so we did show a sort of a capacity to dig up those tools which were hung up, because everybody would say that, well, in order to cooperate, they don't really need them, that we have different ones, where we're capable of digging them up and actually adjusting them to the situation. From this point of view, I would rather say that we have certain capacities, maybe not preparing to the adaptation of those weak signals, but rather adapting to the situation when something happens which is unexpected, which is the black swan. And in order to be able to find ourselves in this new situation to reconfigure, this is what I think rather valuable. But coming back to your question, and I shan't be taking too much of your time here, but I say, well, yes, indeed, I wouldn't be myself if I didn't say that, for example, artificial intelligence, machine learning could be those areas that are going to come to our aid in terms of some attempts of catching out those weaker signals. And obviously the situation with the Canadian blue dot system, which was capable of somewhere now they're shifting a certain phenomenon coming that could have a pandemic effect, where people would report some symptoms very specific and not that far from each other, and it could be a new disease. Well, it is a very good example of that. That out of the massive data gatherings, which are very much incoherent, we can browse and search some thick codependent communities which tell us already something about some event, and I would say it is very important. Well, I'd like to come back to it before I give over to Philip. Through those thick data, we also mentioned the one that we can't measure, because what you said, Alexandra, relates to the data that you can measure. Well, yes, indeed, even though the data that this blue dot system would capture came from very different sources, they were not entirely contextualized in any simple way. The system looked for something, but you never knew how to grasp it, so it's not a simple statement of, well, AI shows us where the problem is. You could see it, but not entirely. That's a very important part. We'll come back to it. Philip, who wanted to comment as to how much we can find those weak signals, to what extent the professor suggested, or that Alexandra used this anti-fragility. There is this agile term, agility, that is a capacity of quick reaction to changes. What is it related to? What are the requirements? Is a catching of the weak signals, or perhaps something else? You mentioned the approaches and the attitudes of leader before. Well, yes, I did, I think. And this approaching of a black swan, as you mentioned it, is an act which accelerates the historic processes. Mind you, the coronavirus meant that governments decided to introduce home office just like that over a couple of hours. Decisions to close schools and teach online are taken very quickly. Massive experiments, social experiments, are run across the states today. I witness a police going next to my balcony who were calling off for people to disperse. So this black swan means that we totally change the topography of the world, also from the point of view of geopolitics. And I think that also generates a certain capital, a certain chance of going towards utopia or dystopia. That is yet another thread for us to discuss. But in terms of this agility, that is a quick reaction, I think perhaps subversively, it is in the VUCA world that we should really take care of this spirit. That is the only permanent thing which in the world which is impermanent could save us in the relation with our company, with our clothes, people, relatives, being good husband, which you mentioned before, with running your home budget and so on and so forth. And the answer to this vicissitude could be moderation. Uncertainty could be countered with bravery. Professor Pujański very often mentioned that innovation is rebellion, and rebellion is an art. And I think such rebels, daring rebels, in this world of uncertainty is something that we need. And that also also fits in the whole methods of Agile. The answer to complexity is justice and competence is wisdom. That is those 4 Stoic virtues, which I've been taking quite a look at it. That is moderation, wisdom, courage, and that could be actually the source, the workshop for us in this world of multitude meanings. Okay, that's great that you mentioned the Stoics and the attitudes, because finally Agile, contrary to what is often accepted, is not a set of techniques. It's first of all the mindset, it's first of all the collection of attitudes, a collection of relations. And now moving on and moving further, does it mean that the situation where we found ourselves today, well, obviously it is a crisis, it is very much stressful for each and every one of us, and experiencing this destabilization on our own, witnessing this sudden, totally elusive world which we used to live in a month ago, suddenly it falls down, and every one of us is stressed and uncertain. That is exactly what we mentioned before mentioning the VUCA world. Suddenly it's no longer a tale, it's an experience. And the question is, can't we treat it with all the tragics of the situation which we can't change, but shouldn't we rather treat it as a training that could teach us something, that could change us, that allows us to create the attitudes for the future, perhaps some methods? If so, what attitudes are these, what methods are these, what competences are these? Have you got any idea for that? Well, if I allow myself to take the floor, from my perspective, in this type of moment, a very significant thing is, as you mentioned, is unpredictable, hardly definable, even if there are any bases on which we could create a trend, which even weak but still requires our attention or observation. It might happen as with coronavirus, that is simply overlooked or disregarded, or there are no tools which could be used to stop the negative effects of this incoming event. What interests me is rather the day after. That is, what this type of event leads us to, us as individuals, us as groups, connected, for example, in the organizational units and the company as in scientific units, but also in the very much dispersed community, which is a city, a major organism. Well, now we can see a massive change incoming, since out of this attitude that we had over the last decades, that is the generation of community tools that will lead us towards a joint use of our space and the public and the urban definition, generating the possibilities for us to mix. This makes this value added might arise in this urban consent. Well, suddenly we enter the world where it's isolation which becomes the primary thing due to the fact that it gives the opportunity to live. So something which fully counters the urban space. In the city we are for the crowd that gives us the safety. Perhaps it's a new urban. Well, you know, contagion will also spread in the medieval cities. There is this moment when the city, from its very safe place, suddenly it turns into a very unsafe type of space. And what we can do with these experiences of tomorrow, how we can use it, what we can do with the feeling that Philip just mentioned on the accelerated digitalization of the many different spheres of our life, but at the same time we can see that this accelerated digitalization managed to dig up something that coronavirus did with the world, being this serum of truth. That's an excellent definition, is the fact that we have great inequality in access to education, in access to tools, which make it possible for this digitalization of this world that we have. All those positive, quick reaction organisms that we right now are seeing, which are capable of, well, thanks to the reserves, thanks to those cushions and some financial buffers, or the preparation from the point of view of technology to face the situation that we have all found ourselves in, at the same time have shown that this is a double-edged stick. Aside from this great ability to accelerate, to build, there are ideas for businesses on those new needs that are arising. This whole situation has a flip side, the possibility to draw out the darkest sides of what we tended to think of as normality, and that is what I think is a massive value added stemming from this difficult thing we have found ourselves in.
Thanks to this, we can build something that makes sense for future. So I understand that the serum of the truth, which shows those who are privileged and those who have the tools to use it, and at the same time those who unfortunately are harmed by the social system. Hence they cannot afford now for a change. This is the first thought, right? And the second thought, that we could be able to generate mechanisms to manage it better in future, right? Did I understand you correctly? Well, yes, of course. I told you about education. Education shows that we have huge lack of balance when it comes to access to tools. In the case of children or pupils who want to participate in the educational process, but it is enough to mention the health service. We are closer to the topic that provoked us to this meeting, and also closer to dramatic conditions in which today people working in the health service really have to help others. Maybe the professor could comment what Bogna said. Professor, can you hear us? You have to switch on your microphone. Okay, here we go. So, I agree with Alexandra, as always. Artificial intelligence, well, the only thing that it does correctly right now is to detect the weak signals in major collections of unstructured data, and the search for weak signals is genius. But the second thing I think that is really necessary is the fact that we have to listen, and the issue with weak signals is that people quite simply ignore it because they are weak. I have here at the side of my desktop a slide that shows for the past 10 years the list of black swans. After the book was published on black swans, people made a list of black swans. And I just wanted to tell you that rank number 1 10 years ago is global pandemics. So it's not something that suddenly occurred and happened. I can read out for you because other black swans are interesting as well, according to this from 10 years ago. Acceleration of climate changes. 10 years ago, the fall of the euro or the European Union, democratization or fall of China, economical fall. And it's interesting that the black swan is democratization in China, which would be possible, but also the economic fall, reforms in Iran, a nuclear war, or a huge global cyber attack. But for example, very strong geomagnetic explosions on the sun. I don't know if you, probably the majority of you knows, and the listeners know as well, that we foresee, or the experts foresee, that based on the analysis on the explosions that have a cyclical character, there will be an explosion on the sun which will destroy 1/3 of our global electronics. So we know this already. Then the fact that the US will resign from the world leadership because they tried to be the world leader, and finally the discovery of a new energy source. So we know what potentially might happen. Once again, the global pandemics was ranked first, and we have done nothing against it. And we have done nothing against it. Maybe we could see the slide where we have the speech of Bill Gates. And he told us what's going to happen. And again, a weak signal. So a diagnosis, a speculation or scenario writing that no one took seriously. Why? How to explain this? Why? Despite the information, despite our awareness, why did no one foresee this? How we could explain this?
Drugi jest komentarz, bardzo zresztą ciekawy. Ostatnio przeczytałem.
Another interesting comment. I recently read that climatologists from Australia
przewidywali ten wielki pożar w
have
Australii.
foreseen this great
przewidują to
fire
dosyć
in
trafnie.
Australia, and they do this every couple of years.
I jedyny problem, który
And
oni-
the only
jedyny, w
problem,
każdym razie
maybe not the
główny
only,
problem, jaki oni
the
mają
main
z
problem
modelowaniem
that they have
pożarów
with
w Australii,
modeling
to
the
jest to, że
fires
do
in
tego
Australia
potrzebne
is the
są
fact that
super, mega
you need
komputery.
really powerful
Te
computers.
bidaki,
And unfortunately, those poor climatologists from Australia do not have money to do this, to turn on to a great network, hence their prognoses are, well, weak signals, despite the fact that the fire in Australia really occurs.
Niby to wszyscy wiedzą.
So, on the one hand, everyone knows this, but climatologists in Australia do not get money to get access to a powerful computer. So let me ask you again. So why is humanity so stupid? Well, we know that those things might happen, and even experts say this, and it's not that you have not foreseen this, and I'll come back to what Bill Gates said, that the epidemics would happen, and why no one did this. Yeah, it's a good argument.
Przewidywał.
Filip?
Nie wiem, bo pan profesor, jeżeli chciał coś powiedzieć, to proszę bardzo.
Professor, would you like to say something?
Powiedziałem tylko tyle, że przewidywał. No, mieliśmy takie przewidywania.
Tak, no ja ten wątek Billa Gatesa trochę
Well, the issue of Bill Gates is something I wanted to elaborate on.
Bo Bill Gates w 1999 roku przepowiedział
In 1999, Bill Gates said there would be a smartphone boom and other trends like internet bots.
Później w 2015
Later in 2015, he mentioned these global pandemics, and no one listened to him. I think that Ivo and your panelists, it results from our conformism and consumptionism. The same applies to climate changes, meaning that the hierarchy of values searches for comfort, first of all, and safety, and putting trust in what we see now requires a change of certain habits. You have to put in some effort, you have to think about the energy and be the one that thinks differently, and this is the one thing that's important. And the other has to do with the fact that we, while designing various... Can you hear us? I can hear you very well. It's okay.
Halo?
It's okay.
Dobra, przepraszam. Czyli generalnie powiedziałem o tej
Okay, so I mentioned this comfort and climate changes, right? So some signals that we have and that we get from the world, well, still they are below the projected projects, businesses aiming at profit. And big international corporations want, first of all, to generate profit. We are talking about the age of a human being that has destroyed, geologically speaking, the Earth. But we, as people in the entire history of the world, exist for a very short period of time. We are a generation of people who are still learning, who should be humble and not exploit the Earth to the maximum.
Na to, jak można to zmienić, są na przykład
B Corps are an answer to this, and Eva, I know you believe in the benefit corporation. So all organizations that will be first of all focused on the general good, it might be a utopia, but not focused on profit, but on the general good. Hence, I think that the reaction to this would be really, really bad. So I would sum up it very briefly what I understood. Why we were so stupid. First of all, we were greedy because we were hasty, and we played as long as there was something to win, at least quoting those on whom the game depends. But hope is, again, a macro trend, just like organizations aiming at not generating profit. I'd like to come back to this, to the benefit corporations. Alexandra also wants to say something as an answer to the question why you were so stupid. You have to turn on the mic, Alexandra. Now we can hear you. So first of all, we were stupid indeed, and you have to remember other things, like I told you I told you so, so that's a remark for being stupid. I think that someone can be found that told us something about this, that something might happen. Let's think of The Big Short film. It's a movie that actually have foreseen the financial crisis from 2008. Back then, I remember I went to the US as a student. This was my first year of living in New York, the first 2 months actually. I remember an economist who during the first lecture said it's going to be a crisis. I think it was more or less clear because the dollar was really cheap, but still the mainstream media negated the fact. And now Philip told us here that we were greedy, that there is a system that generates profit, and it's difficult not to agree with this, but I would add one additional thing. I would say the following, that reality is thick. You mentioned thick data. I would say thick reality, meaning that the reality stimulates us really strongly to a number of activities, that it is indeed very difficult to reverse the trend and to look into the future. Hence, foresight is very difficult task, because actually when it comes to the reality that is sucking us in is a lot, and it's difficult to step back and look from a broader perspective. It's a paradox situation. I do not perceive this as an opportunity. So what's happening now, it's dramatic, especially when you look at Italy, where the fatality rate is so high. But I think that we are in an isolation where we have less impulses. Of course, there are a lot of impulses from the network, for example, and we have lost the signal.
Widzę jakąś szansę na budowanie nowej umowy społecznej pod wspólnotę.
So maybe we could make a new social contract if this idealism is there. Well, we have to come back today to the book that you recently published together with Dariusz Jemielniak.
Mówisz o collaborative society.
You talk about collaborative society
Jako społeczeństwo współpracy
as a society of collaboration. And we could connect it with the B Corps and with thinking about the profit category that for some time is being redefined, exceeding the purely monetary perspective. But I would like to refer to one thing, because while I was preparing to this debate, we talked a lot about the topics and prepared questions, and I thought what's most important. And right now I know, because now we are forced to be confronted with the basic questions about ourselves, and this is positive indeed, meaning that we have to ask ourselves first of all what's important for us. We experience what is important for us, and we see what is not important for us at the same time. All of those things that have clouded our minds for the last years in the form of like what car to buy, where to go on holidays, it's gone. It's abstract. And this is the thing I see the first positive feature. Bogna Świątkowska.
Już się włączam. Słuchajcie, no więc oczywiście, ja się upieram przy tym, że gdybym miała
Well,
decydować,
if I were
w którym
to
kierunku
decide in
miałabym
which
wydać
direction
energię teraz,
I should devote my energy towards,
mnie się wydaje, że
I
rozpamiętywanie
think
tego
that
stanu, w którym obecnie
thinking
jesteśmy,
about the
ma
current
sens
state that
tylko i
we have found
wyłącznie,
ourselves
jeśli
in
lepiej
now
wymyślimy
makes
sobie ten
sense
świat
if
u
we will think or have a plan for the future world, because what we are observing today,
no nie wiem, pewnie macie kontakt z wieloma
you probably
osobami,
are in
które
touch with a
po
lot of
prostu
people
przebywają
who
w
are
domu,
at home,
pracują zdalnie,
work
ich
from
dzieci,
home, and their children are
muszą
with
się
them. Their
uczyć
children
również
have to
zdalnie.
learn also
Te
online,
relacje na
and the
wspólnej
relations
przestrzeni jednego mieszkania
in a
gęstnieją
joint area are very
i
dense and
gęstnieją.
dense
Pojawiają
and
się
dense,
myśli o tym,
and
co jest
there
dla
are
nas ważne,
thoughts
a co
about
nie jest
what's
ważne, ale w
important for
zupełnie
us, what's
innym
less important
też
for us,
wymiarze,
but
nie
also
w tym
in a
takim
different dimension.
wysokich rozważań o
Not the
wartościach,
so-called deep thinking
czy
about
też
values
jakiejś takiej filozoficznej,
or philosophical
planie
values
filozoficznym,
even,
ale tego, że jak
but the
bardzo
fact
ważna dla
that
nas jest przestrzeń, to o czym mówiła
space
przed chwilą
is
Ola.
important for us, what
Jak
Ola
bardzo ważny
said,
dla nas
that
jest
it's really
kontakt
important to
cielesny
have
z
physical
drugim
contact with
człowiekiem,
another person,
przypadkowość spotkań,
or
wolność
meetings by
zadecydowania, czy
accidents,
wyjdę
or the
dzisiaj z
freedom,
domu,
the freedom
czy
to
zostanę.
decide whether I leave home or stay at home.
To jest taki,
I think
to jest
that
taki
this
moment,
is
kiedy,
a moment
najgorsze, czego nam
when
się
the
mogło
worst that
przytrafić, to
could
koncentracja
happen
właśnie na tym momencie.
is focus on this
Powiedzmy, nie
exact
jesteśmy,
moment. Well, first of all,
w tej rozmowie
and we
także,
know this
że
already,
nie jesteśmy w stanie
that we are not
przewidzieć i
able to
zapobiec
foresee or
skutecznie tego rodzaju
stop
wydarzeniom.
efficiently
Jesteśmy w
such
stanie je
events. We
zminimalizować,
can
jesteśmy
minimize
w stanie
them. We can
przygotować narzędzia,
theoretically
którymi można
prepare
byłoby sobie
tools
z nimi
that
poradzić.
with the help of which we
Ale,
could manage such an
ten
event.
koronawirus
But this
i to, co
coronavirus
on
and
robi
what it
z,
does
z naszym życiem
with
społecznym,
our life,
życiem
especially our
także tym
social
takim
life
najbliższym
and
nam,
our,
życiem
let's say,
rodzinnym.
closest life
On
being the
pokazuje,
family
że,
life,
jak mi się wydaje,
it
te
shows that, it seems to me at
pomysły na
least,
to,
that
co
those
zrobić w
ideas
tym
when it comes to
świecie
what
po,
we can do in this
one
post-coronavirus
będą
life will
wydaje mi się,
include, I think,
zaskakująco mało
surprisingly
pamięci o tym,
few
jak,
memory of
jak na tym poziomie
how
emocjonalnym
on this emotional
żeśmy źle
level
przeżywali
we
te,
managed to
sytuacje.
experience the
dlaczego w ogóle
situation
o tym
wrongly.
mówię, tak?
Why am I
Bo
mentioning this? Because this might be
to, że ludzie dzisiaj
confusing the
źle
fact
śpią,
that
że się boją, że
people
mają
don't
takie,
sleep well,
wiecie,
that
wzmożone
they
lęki
experience
dzisiaj,
fear,
także,
and so on and so forth.
trudno jest o tym
It's difficult
rozmawiać
to talk about
z tego
this
powodu, że
indeed, because
jakby nadmiar tej
I can put it this way,
emocjonalności w
the
rozmowach wydaje się być
excessive
też taką
emotional
emfazą czy
amount
przesadą,
is an
ale to jest
emphasis
coś,
or
co
an exaggeration,
powoduje, że
but
ta
at the
nasza
same time
zdolność wymyślania tej
it
lepszej
shows
przyszłości
that
jest ograniczona
our
do
possibility to
zwierzęcego-
generate the future and to
zwierzęcej
think
chęci,
about the
żeby było tak jak
future is
kiedyś.
limited to let it be the way
I
it
to,
used to be.
ten powrót do tego, żeby
And
było
coming
bezpiecznie,
back
jak
to the
kiedyś,
feeling
jak
of
to coś, co
security
znamy,
like we
też
used to
uważam za
have it is
niebezpieczny
also
sposób
dangerous
myślenia.
way of
Coś, czego
thinking.
nie powinniśmy,
We should not, I think,
przyjmować.
follow this path. I
teraz
agree
jest
with
to
you,
bardzo
Bogna.
trudne, no bo oczywiście
And it is
zasada
difficult
przyjemności
indeed
działa
because
i to
you
jest,
have the
coś, czego człowiek szuka na
pleasure
udaje.
rule and
Jest
you
taki
search for
bezpieczeństwa,
pleasure all the
komfortu.
time. You
I może go
search for
znaleźć
safety,
albo w
comfort. You can
podstawach
find it
biznesowych, czyli
either in
nadal
business
projektu
approaches
majątku,
and multiplying your
poszukiwanie
wealth
dystynkcji,
and in
różnic opartych
searching for
na
distinctions
przykład
and
na
differences
sukcesie
based on
finansowym czy biznesowym,
financial success and
bądź
business
też,
success, or
przewartościowanie tego,
revaluing
i poszukiwanie
everything
bezpieczeństwa
and
właśnie
searching
w
for
zaspokajaniu tych
safety
emocjonalnych,
and
deficytów,
first of
które
all
się
emotional
ujawniają w takim
deficits
momencie
that are
kryzysu jak
visible
ten.
in such crisis. I agree with you, Bogna, which is why I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that nowadays we have to ask certain questions, think what we are missing. In the background, we have the Maslow pyramid that nowadays is really remastered or really limited, because nowadays we think about our safety. We are not worried how our holidays will look like, but on the other side, and if the professor wants to jump in, the second important question that allows us to move to the next stage of this conversation is how we think of the future and who we want to be in future, who we as an end, as a unit, as a society. Professor, please.
No dobrze, to mi się strasznie podoba to pytanie, dlaczego
I
jesteśmy.
really like the question why we are so stupid, to be honest.
Parę odpowiedzi.
I have a couple of answers. The first answer being that very often we
Wyrażeniem oj tam, oj tam.
use the phrase,
Jak coś widzimy,
well,
że coś nam nie pasuje,
doesn't mind, it doesn't mind. If, for example, don't mind, please don't mind, please don't mind. If something is wrong, if something that there's something we don't want to talk about, we say, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. But it is confusing because I think that people as human beings, as Homo sapiens, are stupid because they are so wise at the same time. I don't know if you understand it, but Homo sapiens is the only biological species which is able to generate, to shape its future. You are not based on instincts. You might think of the future and shape it. And this is an important feature, but there is a problem that every one of us, or at least big social groups, have different visions of the future. As my friend used to say, the entire world is an area of power, is a field of power, and on this area of power you have various expectations of various groups and various objectives that want to do it in the future. So what is a result of it is a vector of the power, and it's never an optimum solution. It always is a solution if one of the powers will be more important and it's not rational. However, every single of the members tries to be rational and reasonable. So this is my solution. So our silliness results from our wisdom because we are too wise. And why a point of reference of Bogdan said, criticizing on purpose that people don't want to change, I want to remind you that the need of safety is one of the strongest, evolutionary speaking, features of character. This allowed entire species to survive. So it's no big surprise that people want to live in safety because this is an evolutionary feature. Another thing is how to convince people to change. But saying that people don't want to change is not necessarily true. You, as far as I listen, you encourage people to do it, and there's another word that is irritating for me, namely the word agile. I think it's a fall of the typical way of thinking because people are dealing a lot with adjusting, with being agile, being quick, with changing themselves. They forget to sit down, stop, and think which way to go. I knew that I would join this conversation and I had this thought that this coronavirus globally is a very good event at the end of the day. Because it forces us to think, to stop, and to wait. Taking into consideration this all agile corporation-like strategies, it's important to stop and to think where we are heading, what we want from life. Donald Tusk said recently that the most important thing for combating crisis is European integration, and he supported my theory that people are thinking in a very selfish way. If we have world technologies, then we can use them, but they generate global problems, and global problems can only be solved in a global way, and we don't have a global. And now coronavirus gives us this certain stop and allows us to think what we can do with this. Professor, you express a theory that was presented in the Time magazine by a very well-known author Yuval Harari, that today we are missing global leadership, but local leadership as well. So what does it mean to be a leader? And Philip mentioned this. A leader that is able to play in a cynical way, or the one who is the leader and shows the example. And you paraphrase, you also use the metaphor of a very well-known author, analytic Vivienne Lilcourt, who said that coronavirus is a blessing for the planet, that is actually a chance because it forces us to stop, to review the values, to put on ourselves a consumption like quarantine, and maybe we could turn our thoughts towards solutions, who we want to be after the epidemics as societies and entities. Aleksandra?
Dźwięk.
Już mnie słychać z powrotem, mam nadzieję. No ja muszę powiedzieć, że ja na przykład ze zdumieniem czytam takie
Well, I have to say that I'm surprised when it comes to the theories of some politicians also in Poland, but internationally speaking, globally also, that, well, please hold on 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 1 month, and we are coming back to normal life. For me, this is, and I'll agree with Piotr, this is indeed a peculiar discourse, because they are saying, well, in 1 month it's going to be over, we're going to forget about this, everything is going to be fine. And for a number of reasons, it's not going to be fine, because speaking reasonably, it's not the last visit of a black swan being the coronavirus. That's going to be a next one probably, and we can prepare ourselves, but not thinking in those categories that if we pack it very nicely, then it's going to look nice because the economy has to move on. No, of course not, because it's difficult to say how long the work on the vaccine will last, whether it will be efficient or not, how it's going to be distributed, or if it's going to be distributed, and the fact that it's going to be created won't mean that we are all going to be safe. But do you mean that's new normality? I think that's going to be a new normality. It's going to be not the old one. But at the same time, you have to think about a couple of cases. You are asking who we would like to be in future, what are the consequences that we should draw. Where I'm thinking now a lot about silent, maybe not silent winners of the war. You can get rich based on war, you can get rich here as well. There are a lot of people who are gonna lose, but there are those who win. Like, for example, digital giants. They are very rich, people consume a lot of content, they use tools for mutual work, for co-work, medical players also can win, can make some gains, and I'm asking myself, if technology are the base utility like energy, the Maslow pyramid, in this case which is now, if we want to work in any way, then this networking, then this internet is really necessary, we need it, and this is the basic utility. And in this peculiar situation, like, I think Netflix wins. It's not that Netflix is guilty, but there are a couple of players who win. For me, a very important thought is, for example, how in a situation where the majority is losing and the minority is winning, create a new social contract where we will be showing more solidarity. And I think that this is an open question. It's not a digital dictatorship, but I'm really thinking about this, meaning how we together can, with business, which is not, in this case, a very difficult position, how could we enter in a new contract, taking into consideration that a lot of lives is being broken due to this situation that can last some time. We can think it through again and think, for example, about ownership, think about sustainability, think about how we could function, the more so that if this new normality is in the following way, namely that we're expecting another phase of what we are suffering now. We'll come back to this in a moment, especially in the context of the book that we mentioned, namely Collaborator Society. Also in the context, unfortunately, of the awareness that the virus will have a new form, it will mutate, and unfortunately we'll have a vaccine for a not up-to-date version of the virus. I know that Filip wants to add to what she said, and then Jarosław Kuźniar with questions from our viewers. Filip.
Tak, dzięki.
Okay, thank you. Generally, I have to say that it's true indeed that there is a negative aspect when it comes to the influence of the virus to the world, because death is visible and the results are dramatic. But at the same time, I think that people who are not subject to this virus and their isolation, if they don't use this moment as a certain chance for self-development, for reinforcing their relation, building their businesses, it's going to be a waste of time and hour. I think what we have to do now is jointly try to change the world for better. And as you said, as you mentioned Harari and his article, he shows that the world after the coronavirus can tend either to a totalitarian system and regime with citizen and with the fact that people will be followed. And even in China, the biometric data which is being now collected is collected for future surveillance, and it is of course not very good, but it can go in the technocratic version as well, so in a kind of utopia. Thanks to the coronavirus, I found time to finally start practicing yoga. Being mindful and being humble is very important for me, and these are simple steps that everyone from us can cherish and flourish. There are hackathons on the internet that can help combat also coronavirus. We can also use technology that is there, and I think that every single one of us can be of help here. So I think that everyone in your own home, in your own isolation, can be closer to one another and also closer to other people and the world around us, and it's worth to think about this.
And to appreciate how much we're gaining in the face-to-face relations and how much the online relations, to which we're doomed right now, make our relations, our communications poorer. And this is the question I'd like to leave you to ponder upon, as to whether it is really like that we can have the whole offline and the online. Definitely we cannot. Just take a look at what it looks like from the point of view of leadership, from the point of view of managing innovation. Is it possible online, or is that only what we think, because we are not appreciating how important the face-to-face interaction is? So just one word on, you mentioned Harari and this dystopian vision. Sure, Alexandra could tell us a lot on how the biometric data is used. Harari draws our attention to the fact that during the times of crisis we are ready to swallow many things, that is, agree from fear of risk, and later those things such as we had border checks, taking your shoes off. Well, perhaps soon we'll have a temperature measured in public spaces, and we'll simply agree to that through inertia, that now certain things will come in, making use of the potential technology to take a look at the biometric invigilation, which will stay with us forever. And now I'm giving over to Jarosław Kuźniar, who has questions and remarks from our public. When I'm seeing and hearing you all, I really feel like on a lecture. I long ago finished my classes, but I really feel good. 36.7, this is what I have in my temperature. Also had a temperature of occasion to talk to Ella today. Human intelligence, but one remark from me as a parent of a 7-year-old Zosia, well, in relation to what all I mentioned as to who can win today. Today the winners of the technology jazz, because we transmit lots. We consume, we organize. I'm also the kind of guy who, from the point of the traditional media, was put into the online world, tries to talk to people. It seems to me that quite a lot can be brought from offline to online, and allow yourself to be dragged in. And so I'll prove it on the example of the questions from our viewers. But coming back to the 7-year-old Zosia, whose surname is just as mine, well, it's very good for me that you have the victory of this kid, that if she waits for this 10 o'clock hour today when she has to enter Excel and click specifically and get her scores for a very specific piece of class, she has to be mindful and ask me whether she has to turn the camera on so that she's visible. Well, yes, I say, please do, because that's participation in the class. Usually when sitting in the class, you don't turn your back to the kid, so open up. And it wasn't the kind of kid that would go out onto the stage to show herself and show off. But today I've taken my tripod. Over the last days we have recorded stuff where for 10 minutes she could talk to me, to the camera, with full understanding. So for me that's a very large victory, that those kids are capable of entering this world and transmitting themselves into the space which for us, the elders, it has never ever happened. Now lots of adults have finally started learning being online, because in corporations they can see this necessarily. They have to learn to speak, and how are they to keep up the contact with the camera, whether they are supposed to to gesticulate and so on and so forth. So they will have the kind of skills that we never thought that is good. But from the point of view of the questions of our viewers, Sylvia asks, sorry, Kasia, is this extraordinary situation, this is what Ola mentioned relating to perhaps that social construct, does this special situation mean that as people will go down into nivellating the difference in the access to public goods such as education or Medicare, do you think that will be something like even those who didn't want to feel their health today, they will feel that they have to? Well, I'd put it like that. Well, it's quite unexpectedly. We're having the game over of the so-called warranted revenue topic. I was always quite skeptical towards the form when the solution was presented. It is towards the fact that somebody speaks of any digital alms for the unnecessary ones. Well, it seems a misidea, this whole narrative of the Silicon Valley, that it will have those solutions then, give some money on that. I didn't like it, but as a matter of fact, it's very interesting. And recently we had this Green New Deal discussed. Now Green New Deal has to give way to some other deal, perhaps, that we'll be able to strike, but I think that what Bogna mentioned, that is getting rid of the differences in access. Now mind the issue of education. There's going to be kids who will have their classes on Zoom, who will be able to make use of the education that the technology gives us, and well, it does give quite tremendous ones. The classes can be great, and there's going to be kids who such possibilities will not be given to. And this is a totally fatal situation, yet another layer of bad things, even if those disproportions in education are visible already anyway. So I'll put it like that, that well, this leadership has to be based on this rather strong new foundations and belief that this reality has to be remodeled, because free market, well, in this situation, it's extraordinary, it really is simply not working. Well, there recently was the matter of the so-called mask for 2.40. Somebody will say that you can sell the masks because some are selling them even more expensively. Others will say there's a special state and it's not binding. So the principle of free business is unrelated to the situation in which we're in, and perhaps, well, we'll be dealing for a longer time. So definitely, I'm also thinking of that in this book of ours that we wrote with Darek, that, well, this cooperation is in our DNA, but at the same time, it is the most visible in the moments when we're having the change, when we're having the risk, when there is something new. And from this point of view, it seems that now we should be going towards the new foundation of cooperation instead of individualism. We should be open. Okay, I'll only add that once again, this requires the redefinition of the notion of profit in the category of society. But if in a moment we're going to be having some mass multiplication of the unemployed, and those forecasts speak of 1 million people, then a redefinition of our relations and of how we understand the community will be totally inevitable if we are to organize our life in a way. The other thing is that right now we live in a state which is sealed off. How long is this state going to last? How long will it not come in our way? It should also become the topic of debate, of the social debate. And I wonder really as to whether our borders are going to be opened up at the moment when someone makes a decision for us, or when we make a decision that yes, we can open the borders because we want to, because it's safe. There's a couple of things that have already happened related to security that have actually that we actually lost due to this high good, high necessity, and that is, well, starting with the closing of the borders and finishing with all those tools, researches of our safety and security. These are also the matters that we should be discussing jointly into the what extent we wish them to participate in our social life. Jarosław Kuzia, another question. The questions are, what areas of business have the opportunity to develop after the virus goes off? Professor Łopuszański or Philip?
Spróbujmy najpierw, co powie Filip.
Well, let's see what Philip says. I wonder what he says.
człowiek młody może ma inny...
It's a young guy, perhaps his look is different.
E-commerce też.
I'd say e-commerce as well, paradoxically.
Tak, znaczy to jest trudne pytanie, ale myślę, że wszystkie branże, które będą...
Well, it is a difficult question, but I think all the areas that will value the sustainability element of the sustainable development, I think
cała gospodarka związana z
that all the economy related with food and nutrition,
będzie miał istotną
food
rolę
tech and
w
agriculture will
naszym
play a
życiu.
significant role in our
Myślę,
life.
że wszelkie branże, w
And
których
I think
liderzy
all the
będą w stanie
areas in
tak
which the
naprawdę
leaders are
wprowadzić
capable of introducing
algorytmy, organizacje,
algorithms for organizations that will learn, unlearn quickly, in which people are going to be incentivized to experiment and make mistakes. There is no vertical division into any respective branches that will dominate the world after the current crisis. Because the world, as a matter of fact, in a finite time, will probably come back to the economic state or political state, which will be almost similar to the one before the virus. The key thing, however, is the approach of the ethics of work, the organizational culture in the given corporation, the given organization. That, I think, is a dilemma of the egg and the chicken. On the other hand, if the governments and the organizations and the corporations are actually willing to create the good projects, ideas, and structures, let's live in this utopian world for a while, will also require our trust as the consumers in order for those tools and instruments to be to our benefit. So also mentioning the authoritarianism or dystopia, well, obviously I'm sure that could be a significant black vision of the future. However, we have to remember that our trust between us to the employees, to the structures, is also a key thing at the times of the corona crisis.
Profesor Puszański?
Profesor Puszański?
No tak, już teraz mogę coś powiedzieć, bo to mi się to układa, to co powiedziała Ola. Oni są oboje młodzi, Ola i Filip.
Nie to co my.
Realistycznie. Ale Ola powiedziała coś, co po prostu poruszyła jako faceta, który przez ostatnie parę lat przeczytał wszystkie książki o DNA, jakie są na mój słaby poziom tej wiedzy. Ola powiedziała, że współpraca jest w DNA.
She said that cooperation is in the DNA of the man.
Ja bym bardzo
So really, I should like it to be like that, but it's not.
Przeczytajcie sobie taki rozdział jego fundamentalnej opowieść Przodka, który traktuje o wyścigu zbrojnym przy przyrodzie. Jego najsłynniejsza książka, czyli Samolubny gen, to jest książka, która mówi nie tylko gatunki walczą, ale geny są walczą. Więc niestety rzeczywistość jest taka, Olu, że to nie jest w DNA człowieka.
It's not in the DNA of the man or any other species.
Pytanie jest w takim razie,
Now the question is,
jak mimo wszystko zbudować,
how do we build after all, since if there is no cooperation, then this species of ours, and probably other species, will go extinct. So the question is, how, in spite of the fact that within our DNA there is cooperation and combat, how do we build a society, also a global but also a local one, as Bogdan mentioned it, that would get around the main mechanism and try doing what in the longer run is beneficial for us. But after all, we have to come from the point that we are competitive after all, that this economy is going to come back. This is why I didn't want to mention it in the first place. It will come back to this competitiveness, to this participation of the owners to, well, you know, so nothing is going to really change. But this coronavirus, I'm also quite idealistic and think that it gives us this thinking break in order for us to think that something else is important. And not competitiveness. Well, as a right, but it is not in our genes. We have to be able to reason it. Well, since right now we have to be going down and landing, what, 10 minutes more? 5, 3, okay, so we got 3 minutes more. To sum up, first of all, and with Dawkins as someone who can either agree or can argue, second of all, out of what I understood, from Ola, even if our genes are egoistic, then the history of the species is that those who learned to cooperate had more of a chance of survival as a community. And third of all, if Ola wants to comment on that, then it would be really good to relate to the idea of a collaborative society, And third of all, we have to remember that ourselves as consumers are also changing. We've been mentioning, not here, but we have also mentioned of the millennials, we have mentioned the Generation Z, but we must also remember that we are having more and more of a consumer groups, which are aware in choosing the ethical products, even if they are worse in their quality. We call them Generation C, that is, those who are conscious, connected, creative. These are the leaders in their areas. More and more people, briefly speaking, obviously it's not yet with an attractive scale from the point of view of the return on investment, but more and more people, I think, among us as well, are turning towards decisions, consumer decisions, which are ethical. So not in order for them to gain pleasure, but rather in order to assist valuable processes, for example, the benefit corporations or organization of public benefit. What would Ola say to that?
Słuchajcie, to ja bardzo krótko, oczywiście.
Well, just very briefly. First of all, this cooperation is something we understood very broadly. Remember that a so-called angry mob, that is a massive group of haters who tends to attack topics from 4chan. They also collaborate, so I would like us to think of these actions based on cooperation, based on this collaborative action in a very broad manner, because very often we tend to think that it only pertains to the positive phenomenon. In this book of ours we write on the negatives as well, where the force is in the collective action, which brings those synergy effects, and not necessarily being forced to be positive, but here we pinpoint that, as a matter of fact, we have this tendency to those dynamics, this whole called area of the whole called collective intelligence, or the swarm intelligence is a very good description of that. Obviously, people are not the only example, and say phenomenal example of collaboration, where we also have quite a lot of internal competition, by the way. Well, we also have this notion of co-opetition, that is connection of collaboration with, well, egoistic competition with others. Well, I think after all, competing could also have a dimension of cooperation, so I would rather say that this phenomenon has to be viewed very broadly, and would argument that this cooperation is much more than what you had thought. But relating to what Ivo just said, I think it is very important. Let us take a look at the collective money raising, at how the networking of internet platforms allows us to gather around the various issues happening only because we know them and we can see they have a certain dynamics and well worth joining in. This is definitely something that is very prominently seen. Well, these crowdsourcings and various innovations and so on and so forth, we can clearly see that in the larger groups there is a strength to be had, and it can generate some interesting innovative ideas that people are quite willing to gather new things and to invest in it. Well, simply, there's quite a lot of area devoted in the book to this, and we've also argued that there's going to be much more of that in the future. We are also hoping it would happen, and I think that now the situation with coronavirus has clearly shown us how willing people are share of the knowledge. For example, I can see what's happening, like data scientists are working day and night only for certain data to be arranged in notions to see or understand how the pandemic is developing. They're not doing that for the money, they're doing that in order to be able to do some joint actions that together they will be able to give to the people. So I think it seems to me that, well, I wouldn't go as far as just one sentence to be added. It's a very good thing. It's cool to put the expert part, the expert that you began with. This whole debate equipped with one specific area of knowledge, specialized in it very deeply. There's worse in the VUCA world, and it's digital tribes that will work, were based on the collective knowledge and the mutual learning. And I think the era of this Greek agora mentor, who tells people that's what it is, that's what it's going to be, is now coming to an end. Mutual learning is a response to the minimalization of risk and reaction and for the black swan. And perhaps, so I'll just interrupt, collective leadership, because Harari mentions leadership, we also have to think what type of leadership. He mentioned what he should mention. Well, with Harari, the good thing is that you can disagree. However, it's very difficult to ignore him. Very good, Philip, that you tackle the matter of the metaphor that we haven't developed today, that is the metaphor of the expert paradox. Just very briefly to underline it to all those watching us who an expert is. Well, we tend to think that an expert is someone who efficiently predicts the future. Finally, this is the only definition of the expert that we have been using. We tend to forget that future can be predicted only when the reality is stable, when the information is repetitive, when the systems we're working in are homogeneous, and such experts used to live in the 20th century, 21st century, where they keep on living in it. But for these experts, it tends to show the situation that we're having behind, across the street. It is invisible. It is very often them who fail to perceive this weak data that the professor mentioned. Also, this thick data that we must remember, not necessarily the machines are capable of gathering, because finally machines gather whatever the people tell them to measure. So here there is also a topic to be discussed. I know we have, what, 3 minutes more? 3 minutes more. Well, so much for the summary. Well, I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that, after all, our discussion is focused on the analysis of the possible scenarios which depend on us. That is, here I think, this I'm not sure you would agree, but the denominator of our various perspectives, after all, was the belief that yes, we are experiencing a crisis. No, we do not have a way out. We have to change. We can change in a personal, individual way, wonder and ponder as to what competences, what abilities should be developed for us to be able to learn to cope with the situation, and from this type of situation that will keep repeating themselves in the future. On the other hand, we talked much more on what we could do, so that on the local level, on the supra-local level, and the perspective of the city, of the organisms such as cities or organisms such as societies, that we could develop an entirely new set of strategies of coping and managing in this kind of situation. I'm very happy that, after all, we had those notions appearing here of ethics, of relations, as a sort of a promise of an alternative to those 20th century understanding of profit and the 20th century understanding of wages that everybody is fighting for. So finally, there's a word or two of summary for you. We have 1 minute for that. Bogdan? Well, perhaps I'll put it like that, rather optimistically. Well, it seems to me it is also the moment where we can actually understand to what extent these practices of ours, which are happening outside a so-called official run, making us citizens, that is, the local communities, in the environments and the companies, businesses, in the scientific community, how much of our practice that we should like to move over to those regulations which set down the rules and principles in which we function with the authorities. Because in our conversation there was no talk of authorities as the central authority, as a local government, people who have a direct influence on what we could do, what we must do, what we are allowed to do. Obviously, it is quite a substantive area where we as units could decide on our ethical, moral choices, or even the way that we decide to spend our time. But the time comes, just as it has now, when somebody says, okay, check. When it's the authorities, the element which is found quite far away outside of the discussions pertaining to, well, the matters of worldview, enters so deep that it doesn't allow us to forget its existence. And how much of what you imagine here, those ferments and socials of ours, of the supporting of crowdsourcing, crowdfundings, and there's social corporate responsibility enters into the matters which are regulated by the authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, so we hereby land down with our discussion. I hope that in spite, well, that you still can remember the actual bumpy road in the beginning, there's still quite a lot of energy that happened, and managed to go through the other side of the connection. I'm sure we will have more meetings to come. So obviously no one knows what's going to happen in a month, but everything seems to show that Venture Cafe is going to go on and is only gaining momentum. Our actions starting holidays, starting after holidays, will be a bit different, and not every month but every week. And now, closing this discussion down, I'm leaving you here with Kuźniar and Aleksandra Przegalińska. They're going to be talking on her newest book, which was published in Polish. Thank you very much.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank
Do
you.
zobaczenia.
Thank you and see you.
Wielkie.
Okay, so before we move on to the next part, I would like to thank first and foremost for being all of us, to all of you, for being with us on the platform. It's a completely new experience for us, which we had to really do very quick. We had to get ourselves used to the new conditions. We have learned a lot due to the technological challenges, and I hope we'll be able to learn even more. And on our webpage, you have a tab with all the elements of our meeting. One workshop is left, about which Ivo told you already. So the meeting with Aleksandra Przygońska on her book. Those of you who'd like to stay with us longer can look at the bottom of the page, and we are already now in this place, in this time scope, so the meeting Warsaw is coming to an end. But the very same meeting in Boston, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Miami, and Providence is about to start. So with our meetings with Venture Cafe, Thursday gathering, we cover 24-hour time zones all around the world. So the timeline is exceeded as well. Now let's look at our networking platform. As still there are people, so please feel invited. You can enter the address that you see above, venturecafe.warsaw.org/virtual. You see all the details, all the logging details, and the platform is open up to midnight. Those of you who want to meet innovators, meet new people, do something interesting, feel free to do so. Continue your meeting, and I now would like to focus on our partners, without whom this meeting would not be possible. Unfortunately, I have no opportunity to hear you now, so I just wanted to very briefly introduce our partners, without whom it would be impossible to organize this meeting. We have Microsoft, Cambridge Innovation Center, and the Hub, and I'd like to give the floor very briefly to each and every single one of you, so that you can tell us very shortly about what's happening and why are you here with us. Let's start maybe with Hub. We are broadcasting this in Polish and English, so I'll continue in Polish. So Gosia, maybe you start, then we move on to Microsoft.
We'll ask you to speak as a second person. Sorry, I'll be speaking in Polish. But there's also translation in English, so we'll be after Gosia. And Jerzy, I will ask you as a third person. Sorry, I cannot hear you guys. So Gosia. Gosia, sorry, we have some problem with sound, so we need 1 minute. 1 minute. So sorry guys, we'll come back to you shortly. Więc tak, ja w takim razie chciałbym Was serdecznie zaprosić jeszcze raz do naszej platformy.
Invite you to visit our platform at the top of the screen. You should see a link. Please try to log in and to see what our portal really is. I got information that you already have sound. Is that true? Well, marvelous. Marvelous indeed. So, Gosia, I would like to ask you again.
We are Jest nam bardzo przykro, że jesteśmy
We're
tutaj
very
sami, bo
sorry
jesteśmy w
that
Hub
we're
Hubie.
here alone because we are in
Bardzo
Hub
dziękujemy
Hub,
wam za to, że
and
udostępniacie
thank you
nam
for
tą
making
przestrzeń,
this
szczególnie
space
w
for us
trudnych
available
czasach.
the more so in those
Gosiu,
difficult times.
powiedz dwa
Gosia,
słowa
again,
o Hub Hubie
two
i
words about
dlaczego
Hub Hub and
jesteście tak długo
why
już
you are
z nami.
so long with us, 12 months already. Well, indeed, it's true. It's quite a long journey, and actually today I was thinking about it when I saw that it's already the 12th Venture Cafe. So we as Hub Hub have those co-working spaces, and we try to connect people, create great societies in Warsaw and in the entire Central Eastern Europe. For the 11th time, we are here, and we are very pleased to be partner of Venture Cafe. We've been together for a year, and we are getting through the pandemics together. So normally I would speak those words being in our bar in Hub Hub at Nowogrodzka Square. And then you can look everyone into the eye and feel the energy. So this is a different situation, but the fact that we cannot be together in the same rooms does not mean that we cannot build new important connections and start new contacts. And this event today, by the way, I think proved exactly this. And maybe we'll have now more time, more place, more needs, first and foremost, for those contacts to be visible. So please use all the tools that you have. And I'd like to send my kindest regards to Venture Cafe personnel, because it's great that such quickly you have created this entire event. And it's really inspiring to work with you, by the way, I have to say honestly, and I do hope and do count on next meetings of Venture Cafe in future, probably online in the nearest future, but hopefully soon face to face.
Dziękuję, Gosia. Thank you, Gosia. Ruth, could you say a few words about Microsoft for Startup program? We are super excited that you are with us and you're supporting Venture Cafe Thursday gathering.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So really great to be here as Microsoft and partnering with Venture Cafe and also with my great colleagues here from CIC and Hub Hub. I lead all our startups motions across Central Eastern Europe. The best thing I can say to startups is that we love partnering with startups. We believe that if startups build their solutions on Microsoft platforms, then together we can go and help startups reach customers, because most likely any customer a startup wants to reach is a Microsoft customer. And we leverage that to help startups reach the market, grow and scale worldwide. The Microsoft for Startups program is aimed for B2B startups with initial funding. So you're more than welcome to talk to me or to my colleagues, Victoria Przybilska, who is leading our startups activities in Poland, or Olena Kolikova, who is also leading our startups accelerators and Startberry in Poland. In general, it's really great to be here. I love this digital platform. So it's just been, it's a little bit of a roller coaster. So as an entrepreneur, I love trying new things. So really great program and really great platform. And I hope you've been enjoying the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth. Ja znowu przełączę na polski. Mamy tłumaczenie na język angielski. Jerzy, my już chyba się spotykaliśmy wielokrotnie.
I think we have met already many times in various
Dzisiaj,
constellations, let me put it this
reprezentujesz
way, and
Cambridge
today
Innovation
you
Center.
represent Cambridge, right? Innovation
Powiedz dwa
Center. So
słowa,
tell
dwa
us,
słowa,
please, at least
jesteśmy
two
dość
words,
zaprzyjaźnionymi
because we are
organizacjami, tak naprawdę
very
jest
related
siostrzaną
organizations,
organizacją
sister
CIC.
non-profit company of CIC.
Więc,
So
opowiedz dwa słowa o
tell us
CIC,
a couple of
nie
words
dużo
about
osób, które w
CIC,
ogóle nie
because there are
wiedzą,
many
co to
people, I
jest.
think, who do not actually know CIC at all.
Jerzy, musisz
Okay, so we have to demute you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Oczywiście zapomniałem najważniejszej
I
rzeczy.
forgot to demute him,
Aureliusz,
okay.
dziękuję bardzo.
Aureliusz, thank you very much. So,
Teraz reprezentuję Cambridge
starting with
Innovation
now, I
Center.
represent
Jest mi
Cambridge
miło,
Innovation Center. I'm
w tej
extremely
nowej roli,
pleased to
zaprezentować
be
wam
here
na
in the
Venture
new
Cafe,
role
znaczy
at Venture
Gatheringu.
Cafe
Miałem
Thursday
nadzieję,
Gathering.
że
I
będę mieć okazję zrobić to po
thought
sobie,
that
bo
I would have the possibility to do it face to face,
jest
because human interaction, as you all know, is more interesting if you have
tutaj
physical
są,
contact, if you
jednak
can see
kamerki
one
trochę
another,
to,
and webcams
uniemożliwiają.
unfortunately
Niemniej
distort
jednak
this a little
dzisiejsze
bit,
wydarzenie,
but
będę
today's
trzecią
event
osobą
still, and I'll be the
ostatnio
third
w
person,
sieci,
third and last, I
która
suppose,
pochwali,
who
zespół
will
Venture Cafe,
praise
to
the Venture
udało się wam
Capital's
zrobić, bo
team for
naprawdę
what you
jestem
have
tak ogromnym
achieved, because I am
wrażeniem, a
deeply, deeply
spędziliśmy
impressed,
3,5
and
godziny.
really I spent 3.5
Cafe,
hours, the
cały
entire
Thursday
Venture
Gathering,
Cafe, the
siedziałem,
entire Thursday Gathering. I
oglądając
spent here
i
with you,
rozmawiając z ludźmi.
watching
Naprawdę
this,
udało wam się
talking to
zrobić
people, and
niesamowitą
you
rzecz,
achieved
połączyć ludzi
a
przez,
lot. You
przez
connected
internet,
people through the internet, which is a huge
trochę nadając
accomplishment.
kłam, jak Gosia powiedziała, temu, że musimy się spotykać w osobie. Może
And
rzeczywiście nie aż
I
tak
think
bardzo.
that maybe we not necessarily will have to
A
meet
teraz
face to face
troszkę
in the
o
upcoming time, but
Cambridge
still,
Innovation
I'm missing this. When it comes to Cambridge Innovation Center, we are an innovation center being present in the US for 20 years, and
Jednym z takich najbardziej znanych produktów, które
one of the
powstał
most
w
visible or
ścianach,
popular products that has
nie
been
mówiąc,
created in the
Cambridge Innovation
US
Center
within the
jest
walls of
Android,
CIC
a poza tym,
is
ogromna
the
ilość
product
startupów,
with Android, and a lot of
tysięcy w tym
startups,
momencie,
tens of thousands
inwestycji, które zostały
investments
poczynione
that
w
have
CIC.
been made in CIC so far,
Rozwijamy się bardzo dynamicznie
and
i w
we
tym
are
roku,
developing really
CIC otwiera
dynamically,
się zarówno
and
w Warszawie, jak i w Tokio. Ja mam
this year we're
przyjemność
opening in
reprezentować
Tokyo, in
warszawski-
Warsaw. I
warszawską
represent
filię.
the Warsaw
Otwieramy za
office.
2,5 miesiąca w kompleksie Warsaw Place, po
We
drugiej
are opening
stronie
in Warsaw Place,
hubów,
at the other side of
normalnie
Hub, where
byśmy się
normally
spotykali w Nowogrodzkiej Square.
we would be meeting.
Będziemy przestrzenią coworkingową, przestrzenią
We
otwartych
will be a
innowacji, którą
co-working
właśnie Aureliusz
space,
będzie
and
prowadził.
we'll work together with other people.
Pod nazwą District Hall.
We'll have a special
Planujemy
name, the District Wall,
zrewolucjonizować,
and we will
sektor
revolutionize definitely
innowacyjny,
the
startupowy
startup
w
sector in
nowy
Warsaw.
rozdział,
We'll open a new chapter,
tak naprawdę historii innowacji w Warszawie, jak i Polski i
and
całego
we'll
regionu
open new
CEE.
chapter of startup history
My
in
jako
Poland
CIC będziemy
and
to
Central Eastern Europe. We as CIC will be doing this through enabling, so facilitation and moderation
w przestrzeni
of the area that is here, of the area all across our region and CIC. And finally, this is all I wanted to say. Once again, congratulations when it comes to this great event. I hope that you had a great time.
Aureliusz, jeszcze raz gratulacje.
Aurelius, once again, congratulations. You did a hell of a job.
Słuchajcie, dziękuję wam bardzo. Thank you very much. Without you, it will be just a normal event. We make it special because of those connections. Dziękuję wam bardzo.
Thank you very
Przede
much.
wszystkim strasznie brakuje
And first
nam
and foremost,
was
we are
tutaj
really
wszystkich,
missing you, all of you
na
here in
miejscu.
person. And
Postanowiliśmy
this great
zrobić wszystko,
place,
żeby
we want to do everything, really
takiego
everything
poziomu, w którym
to achieve
moglibyśmy
this
się
level
przynajmniej
where
troszkę
at
zbliżyć
least
do,
we could be closer
do świata rzeczywistego,
to the real world, to how we normally build interaction, and we are finishing the last preparation when it comes to sound, and we'll be able to switch to the interview of Aleksandra Przegalińska.
Mam nadzieję, że takich rzeczy będziemy
I
w
hope
stanie
that
robić więcej,
we
korzystając
will
z
be able to do more such stuff.
Zapraszam
I
bardzo
would like to
gorąco
invite all of you wholeheartedly on the 24th or
przepraszam teraz bardzo,
3rd.
chodzi o czwartek,
It's about
przedostatni
Thursday.
czwartek kwietnia.
Thursday in
organizujemy kolejne
April we're
spotkanie,
organizing
które
another
będzie
meeting
dotyczyło
on
kultury i technologii.
culture and
I
technology,
generalnie my tak
and
naprawdę zaplanowaliśmy to, czym
we
będziemy
have
zajmować się w tym
planned
spotkaniu,
what
czyli
we will
trendami,
be doing,
przyszłością,
namely trends
rok
of
temu.
the future
I
1 year
okazało się,
ago
że
already,
idealnie ten temat się
and
wpasował w
ideally
dzisiejszą
this
sytuację.
matches
Tak
today's
samo jak wydaje mi się,
situation.
że idealnie wpasowuje się w sytuację
And it matches
temat
also
kolejnego spotkania
the next
kultury
meeting
i
that we'll
technologii,
have on
połączenia
culture,
tych
not
dwóch
only
dziedzin.
culture but also
Dlatego, że
culture and
wiele
technology, because
instytucji kultury
a lot
przez
of
całą sytuację, która dzieje
institutions
się w
due
Polsce i
to
na całym
what's
świecie,
happening all around the world and in Europe
coraz bardziej dotykać
start to
świata
feel
technologii.
what's happening right now.
No i dzięki temu myślę, że
And
będziemy w stanie
through
pokazać, jak
this,
dużo
I think we'll be
ciekawych
able to
rzeczy
show
w
that a lot
Polsce
of
już się
interesting things
wydarzyło.
in Poland have already
I
happened,
wiemy, że tak naprawdę jest jeszcze
and
bardzo dużo,
there's still a
dużo do
lot
zrobienia
to be done,
w kontekście
and a
digitalizowania
lot has to be done, especially when it comes to the digitization of what we have achieved so far. I'm looking now in the direction of my team. I understand that we still need time.
Czasu, a dla nas jest to zupełnie
For
nowe
us, it's a
doświadczenie,
completely
w
new
którym musimy
experience,
tak
and we have
dużo
to find
rzeczy
ourselves
zgrać, żeby
in very well, and we have to
20
really
ponad sesji,
fit
ponad,
in. There's over 20
60 osób,
sessions,
które
over
dzisiaj
60
łączyliśmy
people
ze sobą
with
tylko i
whom we
wyłącznie,
have
które
connected
tworzyły content.
to create this content.
Dzisiaj, natomiast z tego co widziałem, to kolejne
And from what I have just seen, the next 200 people were on our networking platform.
Że były to owocne
And I hope that these conversations were fruitful indeed. I know that hundreds of people are watching us right now.
Różnego rodzaju mediach społecznościowych, jesteśmy na Facebooku,
And we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on all the other various platforms, on YouTube as well. So if you liked what you have just seen, please share. Share this event so that others can see this as well. You'll be able to watch this also later on after we have finished our event. Understand that how much time we need? So we have sound already. So 50% already behind us.
Więc dobrze, to w takim razie ja w takim razie jeszcze może chcielibyście wy
So maybe you would like to say 2-3 words to support me. Maybe you have some interesting histories you'd like to some stories you'd like to tell us, maybe some tips when it comes to work from like homework, because you have promoted a couple of really interesting ways of having home office working mode. You have promoted a couple of those solutions. You have to unmute yourself.
Przepraszam, to chyba nie był dobry pomysł, bo ja niestety
It was not a good idea because I also have unfortunately limited possibility to hear what you're saying.
Więc już? Jesteśmy gotowi? Dobrze. Jarek. Czy Jarek jest podłączony może?
Jarek jest włączony.
Jarek, czy pomożesz mi?
Słychać, ale jeśli go słychać, to...
Jarek, will you help me? Because I remember when it was not so long ago when you were at TVN24.
No właśnie,
it's not easy to speak. Yes, I turned on TVN24 and this is what I'm still doing, but I'm missing you at TVN24, so generally I admire the fact that you can speak and speak and speak. Well, I really respect what you have done. We have told you at the very beginning we are doing everything so that you are here in a place where you don't have any access, because this is the situation looks like in the world. We said also that there is a completely new platform, 15 tables, 1 floor, many people inside, and we can talk to one another, sit, join the conversation. But all of this requires certain tests, and we do this test live, so a round of applause for Aurelius that he tries to do it, that he really struggles, and despite the fact that we are here in a new world, in a very virtual world, you have found yourselves in this world, and you have answered the questions, talked to the people you wanted to talk to. Ivo said, I leave you with Aleksandra Przegalińska, so when I'm left with Aleksandra Przegalińska and I can talk to her, I'm taking it. But we would like to have even more viewers now. and we are still waiting for the sound. We are on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Periscope, so that all of you have access to the knowledge about artificial intelligence. The pretext is the book by Alexandra, and our short conversation that we have just had shows that she, when it comes to artificial intelligence, is very important and can give us even more possibilities that we had. Maybe not very much more, but we can discover something new. Should I change my seat here to see Ola, meaning Professor Aleksandra Przegalińska? Let's try to talk to her, and you'll be able to, if you could help me with this, I will be really thankful and grateful. We have 15 minutes, yes, great, but I'd like to see Ola on my screen, and I cannot do this. I would not like to summarize the conversation that we have had so far, but Alexandra mentioned that up to now, when the Ebola virus was all around the world, maybe you saw the moment where in one of the African countries, the entire medical personnel was dancing because they managed to cure the last female young patient infected with Ebola. Back then, Ebola allowed to predict certain curves, infectious curves. We believe that artificial intelligence, you are visible pretty well, that artificial intelligence will be helpful when it comes to predicting the development of coronavirus. Good evening, can you hear me, can you see me? We are in a completely different place, we can try again, thank you very much. The viewers say, do not mention Professor Płoszański, but because you are also a professor, so you also have to be introduced as professor. I repeat it over and over again. But I mentioned also the fact that I'll have the possibility to talk to you face to face, but we spoke about this in the small group when Ebola was really dangerous. Artificial intelligence was the tool that allowed to tell us where new hotspots can occur, and in the world of coronavirus, might AI help or not? So of the book, artificial intelligence is not humane, but it's inhumane. So today is actually now that all hands on deck. So also artificial intelligence, it will be treated as a blessing, right?
Zastanawiam się nad tym. Jeśli dasz mi chwilę, skonsultuję to z moim zespołem. Co możemy
Tell this with my team. What can we do so that Alexandra can be heard by all the viewers? Alexandra Przegalińska is very patient and she will forgive us. We'll have to move again. Please stay with us, please be patient. Everyone has to be satisfied.
Prosimy o słowo.
2 słowa na próbę.
Masz słuchawkach?
Tak.
Wyłącz słuchawki, proszę. Sekundkę jeszcze, wyłączamy słuchawki.
Coś, co widziałem w mailach, tylko nie zapomnij słuchawek, tylko nie zapomnij słuchawek. I na koniec słyszę, tylko je wyłącz. Teraz już powinno być ok.
Czyli co, rzucamy
Let's try to improvise and let's show everyone that we are swimming in deep waters in a professional style. So we have compared the pandemics with Ebola, with coronavirus, and we have artificial intelligence that can help us, but I'm thinking to what extent, thanks to the fact that everyone will try to search for new aid or new help in laboratories, how this might help us or whether it might develop or not. I think that on this stage, people who cooperate, and there are a lot of people who cooperate, about how people move, how people transport, what their symptoms are. People use the very same models, and I would not exclude that this AI will move to a next level because we use it in a specific way and it really proves to be good, but soon it can turn out that we need even more data, we need more systems to process the data. We have the quantum computer that could in a more efficient way process the data, and this is what people are working on right now, especially when it comes to the coronavirus spreading in the world. So this might be a new chance, but it seems to me that what we have now is enough to combat the pandemics, or at least somehow limit it, because if you think about the fact that people are saying that in Poland artificial intelligence will, not artificial intelligence, coronavirus will, the pandemics will be gone the second half of April, it's not a theory, it's based on models that have a couple of parameters and make it possible to calculate whether it's possible or not based on density and population. And this is not out of the blue. Yeah, but thinking about the quantum computers, we talked in a completely different manner. The same applies to 5G. If we compare what the government of China does with their society, we also thought that the border of surveillance is somewhere else. But Europe says, okay, we are able to say yes to a couple of solutions like facial recognition. So all of the data that the AI has to be fed with so that it can make decisions is important. Do you think that in Europe now there is food for AI? I have no doubt that it is there. The question how, because we have such rules like privacy. Now we are in a state of emergency. Many important things that were important for us, like protection of our privacy, protection of confidential data, or such data like ideology, politics, culture, religion. This was part of us, and if it was used in any model, it was still anonymous or pseudo-anonymous. We can keep on working like this still. We can at least try to follow the trend and not point to particular people, but the methods that China used and collecting data on the history of trips of a concrete person, this is not anonymous data, this is concrete data, and this gave negative results when it comes to combating this epidemic. So I think that the only model it is possible that for at the time of state of emergency we are focusing on our job so that AI works as efficiently as possible, but when this state of emergency is over, then we also stop the human surveillance, because we don't want to live in such a world when it's not necessary. We spoke previously about what businesses nowadays can flourish and develop. So all the startups that will try to catch up with this new changing world, or the need that will be imposed on us, do you think that AI gives us chances for future? It's a great tool that might tell us what will happen in the future. Now it's a time when AI can really focus on the things that are important for us. For example, what will happen with us? What will happen with the society? Some time ago, we thought, okay, what will happen with the humanity in a couple of months? And now we can use AI to predict this. Leaders cannot predict this. And the need is there. And we cannot talk about future in 5-6 years, but in, let's say, 30 years. And this artificial intelligence is taken now seriously. I generally do not have the impression that it's taken seriously enough. Startups, yes, of course, know that it's a tool that can be used. Business know this, science know this. But do world leaders know this? Politicians? I'm not especially sure. Maybe they don't trust artificial intelligence? What do you think? What's the problem? The Chinese trust. Maybe even they trust too much AI. But if it comes to European leaders, where there's still a lot of data visible, I think they don't know how to use this, how to digest this, and they don't trust this, and we expect that we should see this because there's a lot of data and people exchange it. I get many information like Google Sheets or Excels with predictions from my family and friends. Just like in martial law times where people sent messages to one another, and now it's put on one joint platform. And this data can show a broader spectrum and correlation. But apart from that, I think it's impossible to focus on what's happening in the general trend. It's important what you said about the fact that startups and all the other businesses understand CHNs, use and develop, but on a governmental or decisive level, regardless whether it's local or central, there's a distance. But artificial intelligence nowadays on the first front line, where can it be used? In labs, in HQs, how can it help? Well, first and foremost, I think the entire health sector and working on new medicine, searching for new medicine, curing the illnesses, or for example, combating new illnesses. We say about drugs for malaria, for example, or other diseases that were very difficult or used to be difficult up to now, and AI can help. Artificial intelligence also used to work with us back in the days, but people did not trust artificial intelligence, and this is important. First of all. Second of all, medical diagnosis, that we make medical diagnosis from our chest, for example. It is important that we can distinguish those who are ill because they have pneumonia and those who have another virus in their lungs. Artificial intelligence does it very quickly, very efficiently, but we have to trust it, and the same applies, just as Q said at the very beginning, for understanding the dynamics of development of pandemics. And you can have a model question, which city will be next, and I think that AI can predict it quite well. One additional question, because I think that all of us can agree that this virus is like every other virus. It comes, it is here, but then it evolves, mutates, and the next form will be different. We hope it will not be as severe, as dangerous like this one, not surprising. When it comes to words surprising, will AI help researchers predict possible mutations of virus or coronavirus for future? Well, it is an interesting question indeed. I also ask myself this question. I would like to know whether it's possible. I'm not in the topic that much, but it's about synthetic biology and AI, so the way life is flourishing and evolving, and also building certain links that could steer or control the process, or at least simulate or reflect it. And we saw a couple of months ago a couple of interesting cases. Maybe you remember the so-called artificial bots from cells which were created and programmed, and it gave us some of understanding about evolution and the entire mechanism, how to, for example, such organisms may live, that they can be programmed, can be controlled, how they work. And so it's really simple approach in a new domain that's now being created, so-called artificial life. So it's not artificial intelligence, artificial life. And this, of course, is in the beginner stage, but it's a good way to know how something can evolve and develop. But I think that it's really important to work on it, maybe not still now, maybe next year, maybe the year following the next year, we'll know how artificial intelligence connected with our abilities will give us the answer to the question, how can life change? Madam Professor, I will not take up much more of your time. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining the interview, for the answers for the question marks that are still left, so we'll have opportunity to meet again. All the best. All the best and a lot of health. Thank you, Aleksandra Przegalińska. Thank you, Alexandra, and see you. So we are approaching the end of our meeting. Alexandra has just disconnected from us, and thank you, Alexandra, for being with us much longer.
Dziękuję. Thank you all. Thank you all. Górski, Ewa.
Tak.
Yeah, the first one down. Thank you very much. Thank you much. Great. Well, as you have now seen backstage, I can see there's still quite a lot of backstage team. You'll be able to see it during the film what it looked like here. Take a look at it. It's going to explain a lot to you. You're going to be able to see. You're going to applaud us even more than I hope you will at the end of a meeting. You're going to think, well, they managed to get the world going as any corporation is trying to do it, as the school is trying to do it, especially that the event is a global one, especially that we have put those tables quite a lot of it, and there were many people connected in who have tried to suggest some new solutions. We know what to fix, we know what to change, so that each and every Thursday will be even better. Okay, so once again, take a look at the last chance, the link upstairs, at the transmission. You can see who's drinking tea, who's got coffee, who's drinking. Well, I could even see that the people, well, just as usually we had them at the first inning out, there's an alcohol element that would help them come at ease, but there's also some non-alcoholic drinks. I saw a couple of people who brought their own wine, sitting there and talking. I think, well, that's what I going on. These thematic tables, right, that were created there in the chat, and there was also this general chat, so thank you very much. We all had this great event here, but now online it stays until the end of the day. You are free to use the platform till the end of the day. We're going to be making things more perfect, and next week I'm sure we'll come back to you with more proposals as to how you can use the platform like these. And those of you who'd like to see what us stay with us more longer are encouraged to enter our website of the event with all the informations that you can see and join the events which are happening. Yes, they will be happening at the event. In another location I will show you what it looks like here. We're following the sun almost. In Sydney, it's already gone, in Tokyo, it's already gone, in Rotterdam, it's lasted virtually at the same time that our session was going on. However, we have here quite a lot of interesting activities that will be in Boston and St. Louis, Miami. So if you do have the time, if you want to learn from really the best others, and there's a superb, cool occasion opportunity to do it. Well, thank you very much. I think we've been there for 3 hours. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's sit down. We can't sit. So thank you all. Thank you for staying here with us, and I'm sure Eva, perhaps a couple of words from you. Well, I won't say anything new. Thank you very much to all of you for being here with us, for having been here with us. And please do stay with us for the subsequent Thursday gathering to be happening on 23rd April. The topic is culture and technology. So it is quite up to date. Many cultural institutions have shifted their activities by using technology into the virtual world. So we'll get something interesting in our for you. The funny thing is that this topic was selected a year ago, so that is a sheer accident. So stay tuned, like our channels on social media, from YouTube to Facebook. It's going to be much easier to join you with information. Thank you all. Thank you and have a good night.